You're listening to Dramas Over Flowers with Saya, Anisa, and Paroma. Hey, this is Paroma, and today we have gathered here to talk about Bora Deborah. And I am here with a guest, Dipanjana. Say hi, Dipanjana.
Hello.
Hello.
We're all melting in heat waves. So, anything wrong that we say should be blamed on the temperature.
It's too hot. We lost our minds. We cannot be held responsible for what we say.
And then Bora Deborah did not help.
It certainly tested us. So most of my friends were just watching it half-heartedly, were not really getting into it. But I was really into it. And even when I was not super happy with, and actually I was frequently super unhappy with a lot of the drama, I couldn't stop watching. And we're going to talk about why. But before we do that, Dipanjana, you are a well-known movie critic in India. You have written insightful reviews on many national publications. You're now with Film Companion, which all Indian movie lovers know. And you have also hosted Lit Pickers podcast, which is an amazing book podcast, which I have recommended to all book lovers in my life. How could you?
First of all...
No, how could you? How could you start watching Bora Deborah?
Okay, first of all, thank you first for the shout out to Lit Pickers. Supriya, my co-host in Lit Pickers, is actually the reason I discovered Dramas Over Flowers. And I have always been so thankful to her because this podcast is absolutely my favorite when it comes to K-dramas in particular, because so much of the time I'm listening and I'm nodding like, yes, finally someone has said this much better than I could have. And you guys are so fantastic. So thank you for having me here. This is very, very exciting for me. So here's the thing, right? I have no qualms in admitting that I started watching this drama for two reasons. One is that I will watch a romance no matter what. I will give it a shot no matter what. I love romances. They disappoint me all the time. K-dramas less than other genres, but even within K-dramas, it's like I had such a high when I began watching K-dramas with the romances that I got to see then, that I think I was watching Run On and Rookie Historian Guhirong and obviously Crash Landing like every person in the planet. But these kind of raise your expectations of the genre and the way it writes women and love and attraction in a way that you are bound to be disappointed afterwards. But even so, I find that K-dramas do this so much better than other entertainment cultures. Which I have access to, which is basically English, American, and Indian. And Indian, of course, as you and I know, is like a bunch of many languages. None of them are doing love well, not one. So if there's a romance, I will watch it. If there's a romance with Yoo In-na, I will watch it even more because she's just so fabulous.
Yeah.
Right? She lights the screen up. Her expressions, her punchlines, her rhythm with which she trots out the dialogues, everything. She's got so many awful lines and moments in Bora Deborah, and yet she makes you fall in love with her despite everything,
She completely saved the script. She did. I cannot imagine watching any other actress in that role and just not giving up. Yeah.
So that was basically it. And the other part was that narcissistically, the protagonist of Bora Deborah is an older woman and a writer. I am an older woman and a writer. That made me think, maybe there'll be something that I will find relatable. Now, as it turns out, nothing about the writing side of Bora Deborah is anywhere close to grounded in anything that could be even on a drunk, mad night be considered realistic. But she is an older woman, and the fact that she has had lived a life prior to the events of the drama itself, that's something that honestly for me that is still a plus, because globally there's a love for the youth, which is understandable because that's the market that you're trying to tap. But it leaves some of us older ones feeling a little bit out of it, particularly when it comes to romances.
So initially when I got into K-dramas, I was surprised by the number of dramas that had women in their late 30s, early 40s as
Yeah.
protagonists. Like at that point, I was in my 20s, but like I loved it. Like just the idea that when I'm 10 years older, it's not going to, I don't know, suddenly mean that I have no life. Like there are no more stories to tell about me. Just having K dramas give me that reassurance that it doesn't matter that I'm growing older. It's there are still stories to tell. It was just so fantastic, and of course the absolute ubiquitousness of Nuna
Yeah.
romances, like all of these older women with like younger men, was just fascinating. I never saw
Yeah.
that in any other industry.
And this sort of normalizing of what would be considered transgressive and taboo, and just making it literally just normal, saying that it happens, he's pretty, she's prettier, yay. And that's it. Okay.
And even once, after a few years of watching dramas, once I started understanding why the industry, because this is an extremely patriarchal society, and especially 10, 20 years ago when the trend of these kind of dramas started with the older women, younger men, but mostly the fact that the women were in their 30s and 40s. How did the industry get there? That seemed very anti-patriarchal. How did, yeah, well, it actually makes sense because younger women were cast mostly in movies. That's where they initially found fame. Younger men, however, would not get leading roles in movies that easily, so they would come to dramas. It was sexism after all. The women in the movies, they sort of like went past the 25, 28, they would come to dramas. They would still get leading roles here. They would become domestically famous. They would be in every television, in every household. And their career would go on for another 10, 20 years. Whereas in movies, by the time they're 25, they're already on the shelf. So no director wants to cast them again. Whereas with these young men, they would find initial fame in dramas and then they would graduate and go into movies. So like I said, patriarchy after all, but it gave us something. Like sometimes patriarchy blips and gives us
Sometimes,
something.
just as a side, unwittingly, it gives us things. But just as a slight tangent, it's very interesting to me what you were just saying about how this sort of sexist setup led to younger men and older women being cast in dramas and the Nuna romance tradition, because we're seeing something similar happening in India with the streaming platform revolution. But until very recently, the point was that you could not get huge cinema stars, commercial cinema stars, to be in a streaming show. It was like being on a TV show. You couldn't afford it. It didn't make sense. The economics of it just didn't add up. Even now, it doesn't entirely add up, but there's a lot more prestige, etc. But that's a different thing. What's interesting to me is that the same thing happened, that the older women, older stars, women stars from commercial projects, whether it's TV or cinema, did find projects and roles on streaming. But what I find as a curious contrast is that not romance. They're all detectives, violent godmothers. Like the personification is so alpha male esque, like modeled on the alpha male. There is no room for softness. There is no room for romance. There's no room for love in the way we see the older woman in contemporary Indian streaming cultures, where you have the same thing. The younger stars, the younger men are the ones who are getting the break from this place, and older stars, as in women, are getting their continuing their careers through streaming. But the kind of content that we're picking up here and that is flying also here, so different.
The reason I started with my intro, like asking you how you, a movie critic who's actually well known for being pretty brutal with your criticisms, I have seen comments of people going like, why is this woman always so hard on movies? But you didn't just start Bora Deborah, which, being a huge Yoo Inna fan, I can completely understand being drawn to the initial episodes, but you continued to the end. Just like me, you had issues with this drama, but you finished the drama. What kept you watching? Was it just Yoo Inna?
I think there are two things. One is that I do look at a lot of these stories, not just from the enjoyment perspective, but also from an analytical perspective. It gives me great joy to think about the social world that this is kind of bouncing off. So that was something that I was very interested in with this show, because it was very early on, you realize that this is showing you a grown, mature romance between the first lead pair, but you've also got a secondary romance between practically teenage, I guess they are, or just in their early 20s, which is Bora's sister. I have a lot of thoughts there, but there's that one, and there's the married couple who, I'm forgetting Yu-jung, who is Bora's best friend and her husband. So there are like these three relationships at different ages, stages, and they respond to different aspects of society, I feel, which is very fascinating to me. I am a masochist. If I wasn't a masochist, I wouldn't have been a critic. Like, I subject myself to truly awful things on a regular basis. Like, I know this will hurt and I still watch it. Not just watch it, I go in truly with the, honestly, the only word for it is stupid, with the stupid expectation that I will be wrong and this thing will surprise me. It never does. However, I continue to hope. So with Bora Deborah, like for me, like what really kept me going was just this sort of watching a train wreck and not being able to look away.
I saw so much potential in the main lead's romance because there were beats of it that were just so right to me. And my bias towards Yoo In-na is really sad in that one of my first dramas was Queen and Huntsman. And you know what stayed with me aside from like the brilliant storytelling, and it's one of my favorite time travel
Okay.
dramas of all time. I don't care if people don't understand the rules, I do, and that's what matters. But what stayed with me way after I finished watching that drama was these scenes where Yoo In-na was crying. Like there is this one sequence in the drama, so this is a time travel drama. At one point the hero goes back and she can see how history has changed in history books, and her memory gets affected anytime things change in the past, and therefore the future changes. So I mean it's gripping, honestly.
Right.
But then she remembers enough to look for him in the history books, and she
Ah.
learns that, and her grief. I have never seen an actress do that so successfully on screen where she is crying and I'm feeling like devastated for her. And it's not just that she's a beautiful woman who's like, mastered the art of tears. I don't know what it is about her, but like she just manages to convince you that she is being torn apart inside. And so that scene really stayed with me. And there are multiple scenes of her crying because she does cry prettily after all. But in subsequent dramas, she was never very well used.
Yeah.
She would be cast in secondary roles in dramas pretty often. So you may have seen her in Greatest Love, a Hong sister drama. She was a secondary protagonist there. She was basically the bitchy second lead. She does not do bitchy second lead well.
She's
She
too
really
wholesome.
doesn't. She's too wholesome. And she was in You From Another Star. And again, bitchy second lead, but again, she just does not. And because they wouldn't let her laugh and be expressive there. In both these dramas, she was just so reserved and, I don't know. I just really disliked her characters. But I have watched her scenes multiple times because I just like her so much. And then, I don't know if you guys have watched Secret Garden.
I've watched Secret Garden.
She was just this adorable character who was like roommates with the female lead, and
She's charming.
she was just this super charming.
She's absolutely
It's hard to
charming.
do that role with any kind of it. There wasn't much substance to that role. It was a wisp of a role. But she is memorable and charming there. So if you allow this actress, like I do honestly believe that not every actor is suitable for every role. I mean, the stuff they say about, versatility, this actor can be like 900 roles. There's something wrong there, man. I don't think that's right. I tend to believe that actors specialize in certain kind of roles. With Yoo In-na, she shines the brightest when you let her play a woman who can laugh at herself, at others, who can be quietly witty and wise, and who can make mistakes and be messy about it, but who's also just self-aware, like all of those things,
Yeah.
which is why her casting as Bora was brilliant. It was perfect. It was so good. And the moment like the first episode started, I was really happy with how the drama started. Like initially, her being the host of a radio show, because Yoo In-na in real life has been the host of a radio show for years.
Ah, okay. I had no idea, but see, wonderful.
She has been. And okay, her persona in her real life is much more reserved as a radio host. She's not as cutting and brutal. Like, it's not a dating advice show. Like, she tends to have like celebrity guests and stuff,
Right.
and she's very sweet and polite, but she's also, you know, she has that thing where she can ease you enough for you to say deep stuff, and that's just something amazingly her. Anyway, that's, again, I'm derailing. The point I'm trying to make is her casting was perfect. The persona they gave her initially, this confident woman who's at the peak of her career at this point, you have been given enough crumbs of what she must have done to get to that point. She was a blogger at one point, like a relationship blogger. Then she got this radio host place, and then she's written books which have all been successful because her radio show is so successful. And now she's at this point where she's like, well, I've achieved everything I can achieve in my career. I'm, 30. I need to get married now. I've been with this guy who's, what do those people say? Those alpha circles,
Yeah.
like something about value men, value women, something. I forget the term. Attention listeners, this is your editor here. The term I couldn't recall is high value. In those traditional wife, alpha male circles, value of a woman or a man, always in binary, is defined in very sexist and conventional terms. And the drama really taps into the urban Korean zeitgeist, where these communities where anti-feminism thrives is really getting popular. It's super toxic, but it's about getting yourself with like the man or the woman
Right.
who has enough value to sort of like add to your status and all of
They're
that.
like a capital asset, basically.
Exactly,
They're
like a
not less a
capital asset.
person and more of an asset. And also, in the first episode, not only do you get all of this, but you also see her as an oracle for women in the modern day present, right? So she is their oracle. They come to her with questions and she gives them answers. This is how Delphi worked. This is how Bora works. Like it's kind of amazing. And I
And they're not bad
no, they were good
advice.
advice.
Like
It was
the
like solid stuff. And that final scene in the first episode where she sort of cuts who will eventually be her love interest down to size savagely and perfectly. It was magic. I was just, at the end of the first episode, I was so thrilled to have found this K drama. Like, I was like, this might next 16 weeks, and then I realized it's a 14 episode show. But anyway, my next 16 weeks are sorted.
yeah, no such like. Also, it should have been a 12 episode.
Maybe 10. Maybe 10,
Maybe 10. Honestly, I think what was that drama that came out a couple of months back? Love to Hate You. I think it really benefited from being a 10 episode drama. Like, if it had been one episode longer, it would have crashed and burned. Okay, in the initial episode, you have Bora doing this radio program, and her producer comes and says, hey, we're going to have like this ratings review situation. Can you just be like extra spicy today? So she gets these calls, like solve these problems, like these agony aunt requests, and she is just going through them, being like super spicy, and mostly being like breakup, red flag, da 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 da. And it's fun to listen to.
One of the things that I loved about that first episode was that listening to that show, you totally could believe that this is a hit radio show because you would listen to this.
Yeah.
It was
I
not
would listen to this.
unlike what we will talk about later, but the book in contrast is not a book that anybody will read. Like, nobody will read that book. For no reason whatsoever will you give your money to that.
It wasn't even a book. It's an essay.
It's an essay. It goes from book to an essay, but madam, that is an awful essay. I speak as an editor. Rewrite from the beginning. But anyway, so like unlike that part, what we got later, this made sense. Like, this was world building truly at its best, because this was a show that made sense, this was a person that made sense, and when all the women around her are like, oh my god, and making heart eyes at her, you're like, yes, I am doing the same, thank you very much.
Especially those heart eyes. I loved it so much because you could see Bora surrounded by women who admired her, loved her wit, just thought she was the boss. And I'm all
Oh
for it.
god, yes.
We do not get that enough. So when she initially hears about this caller's issue that she's having with her boyfriend, and the boyfriend in question turns out to be Su-hyuk, who, eventually becomes Bora's love interest. So Su-hyuk is the boyfriend that the scholar has an issue with, because despite being together since college, more or less, and kind of living together for a few years, she's still not sure if they're actually in a relationship. Like, they've had so little communication about what, to define their relationship, that she just doesn't know where they stand. Like, if occasionally her boyfriend would be like, are you meeting other guys? I'm fine if you are. So he's been making it sound like a super, an open relationship, which in a society like Korea and a lot of other societies, if you're in a serious relationship with your boyfriend, you want to talk about what comes next, marriage and all of that, you need to have the certainty that you're actually in a relationship to begin with.
Just to interrupt for 1 second, I just want to make one point, that open relationships are frowned upon or not particularly well understood in most societies. It doesn't have to be a conservative or marriage oriented society, or even an Asian society for that matter. But because the bottom line is that an open relationship is one actually in which there is massive amounts of communication between all partners, that everyone in the relationship knows exactly what's going on, not that the guy goes around doing whatever the hell he wants to and the woman stays at home and wonders, I wonder if he loves me. That's not an open relationship. That's cheating. That's wrong,
Correct. I should rephrase myself, because when I say open relationship, I meant how it's perceived, but a real open relationship does require a lot of communication to maintain on both sides, and you can't just have like one side wanting an open relationship, the other side not wanting one. It doesn't work like that. However, what they had was like a non-exclusive relationship to the girl's mind, and somehow that is simply how they've continued. Now, the story eventually sort of goes in a direction where they are like, well, Bora didn't have like the full picture of what was happening. However, to focus on what we just got in the first couple of episodes, Su-hyuk's co-worker, who had witnessed his relationship with this girl for many years, was also bringing up how he takes her for granted, how he doesn't sort of, give that relationship any special status. And he warns his friend that she's going to leave you if this goes on. So it's not like this is just a hallucination in the girl's head when she puts this question to Bora, what do I do? Should I stick this out? And I honestly found her assessment of the guy very spot on. And so did the show.
Yeah.
Everything she said about that guy turns out to actually, be what Su-hyuk is. And even Su-hyuk realizes that. Like, when he's listening, so he accidentally tunes into not accidentally, he listens to the program because the caller is actually a producer on the show, his girlfriend. And he completely, like, it keeps ringing in his ears. Like, as he does stuff, he hears Bora's voice predicting that this is how he lives his life. And he's like, wow, I'm doing this. Down to stuff that he orders in the restaurant. That's just so funny.
I loved that so much.
Yeah, it was so good. It was really good. But see, this is what I loved about Bora initially. The fact that she is insightful. That her observations aren't just, I don't know, the flippant, and she's not just lucky on the off chance, and she's not rude for the sake of being rude. She is an extremely observant and intelligent character, which, hold on, I'm going to come back to this for a second. Yoo In-na tends to play this kind of characters a lot, who are actually really intelligent, but they don't think they are. Like, she seems to perceive her own intelligence as like worldliness and not actual intelligence. Like, she did the same thing in Queen In-hun's Man, where she thought she was like this silly actor who's just like this, I don't know, this ingenue who barely knows anything, but she's actually really clever. She kept being juxtaposed against this scholarly time traveler dude who's super genius guy, but she figures stuff out really quickly despite having none of his great intelligence, because she is
Right.
intelligent. And the story tells you that, even though the character herself doesn't seem to realize it. And she does a very similar thing here, where she knows that her hunches about people, her observations about people, they are more often than not right. So the show wants you to know that about her initially, but they will not give her any credit for actually being insightful and intelligent, like as the story goes
It's
on.
interesting what you were saying, because I feel like in the other K drama that you're talking about, I haven't seen it. I'm totally putting it on my list. But
Please do.
yeah, the thing is that you can sometimes you can tell from the writing that this is how it's intended to be. Like, this is the kind of writing that taps into the imposter syndrome that so many of us have, irrespective of gender. But women seem to have a little more of it, because all of society exists, 9 times out of 10, patriarchal society exists to remind us that we are not good enough, or that when we're getting things by chance, or because it's an accident of birth or circumstance or something like that. So our imposter syndrome is very deeply ingrained in us. So stories like this sort of tend to be great reminders, as well as depictions of that kind of imposter syndrome. With Bora Deborah, on the other hand, I'm not sure that's what was happening. I'm really not entirely convinced that Akyung loves this character as much as, frankly, even I do, given I spent as much time on her as I did. Because the thing is, like you said, she's so insightful here, but she doesn't. The rest of the show almost entirely exists to break down our good impression of her, and
Yeah,
definitely break down
exactly. Well
whatever
put.
confidence that she has at this point. And I just want to give as a parallel a show that I thought of very frequently while watching this one. Romance is a Bonus Book. Romance is
Oh,
a,
yes.
right at the start of Romance is a Bonus Book. I've now forgotten the lead's name, but
Kangdani?
yes, Kangdani is so broken and so pathetic that I wanted to shake her. Like, are you kidding? Like, she's literally a stowaway in Lee Jong Suk's home. It's
Oh,
it's such a pathetic situation, from where she builds and builds and grows and becomes magnificent. But you see that growth. It's not immediate.
yeah.
It doesn't happen overnight. It's a relatively slow process, but you see it happen. It's literally the reverse of what Bora Deborah does, right?
I love that you brought that up. They do this thing where Kangdani is not just somebody who's like achieving things constantly and she's like
No.
proving herself amazing. No, she learns things. She learns that her preconceived notions were wrong. She learns that, somebody who's in opposition to you ideologically may actually have a really good point. And but then she absorbs it and she grows as a person. That stayed on top of my favorite drama list for like 4 years straight. It was so good.
It is one of the best written women protagonists that I think I've seen across cultures, just because of this, because she starts off at a place of cliches and brokenness and grows into something that is just so not just wholesome, but so hope inducing to everyone who's watching, that you can start from scratch. You can begin with nothing. You can teach yourself, put in the hard work, it'll happen.
Yeah,
And then, in
agreed.
contrast, you have Bora Deborah. But, not just that, it's also, the friendships, the way the friendships work. One of my favorite moments in Romance is a Bonus Book is when that finance director, I think she was, ends up being the DJ.
It's so cool.
She's just going out there doing her thing, takes off her coat, has a leopard print little dress, and she's the DJ in the party. I was just like, more women like this, please, 100%. And now, in contrast, please, Deborah.
And now, in contrast, you have Bora de Bora, where she offhandedly makes a remark about this woman whose identity she doesn't know, that this part-timer at her friend's cafe has met and fallen in love with, and he's met her at a club, and she's now not responding to his text. So what should he do? He's asking her for advice, and she tells him initially that, hey, maybe don't text her anymore, because she says it in a very nice way, and basically her thrust is, stop, don't pursue this. Hey, if it's fated, it'll happen. But what she really wanted to say, which she does to her friend once a part-timer leaves, is that don't pursue this girl. She's a clubber. Why do you want to be with a clubber? How could you turn this woman into this judgmental person? I was going to use a really bad word.
I like the pause. I really do appreciate the pause and the restraint, pregnant with restraint. Part of my problem with the writing of this character, and part of my love for Yoo In-na for having made this character watchable despite these problems in writing, is that when you see the rest of this character, these attitudes don't make sense. This is a woman this is a woman who is very aware of how impressions are made by persona. You see her using that in other ways. The prettiness conversation about being pretty, getting pretty, another problematic part of things. But like, she's very aware of these things. Now, if she's aware of that, why would she say this
about a random, girl that she doesn't know, who, by the way, turns out to be her own sister?
Her own sister.
And now that is the drama laughing at this character, being like, hey, you were being judgy about somebody who's your sister. But that is also the drama not understanding that this joke doesn't land. Think about what you're doing to this character.
This is where I wonder what I was saying earlier about dramas not always necessarily being what I would think I want them to be. So I want this to be a drama that understands that this character is insightful and sees the world in a way that most people are not able to. The drama, I don't think, actually wants that, because it will show her, it shows Bora being lucky with certain insights, mostly about the guy that she's going to end up with. But that feels like dumb luck, because she's so off in so many of these
about
other
everything
things.
else.
Not the least of which, this depiction of her sister, like her cluelessness about her sister is astounding. Her treatment of the situation when, okay, should we go on to episodes 3 and 4? Because as you can see, I cannot sit with this for much longer.
We will now go on to what happens after the amazingness of episode 1. So
Yes.
Episode 1 builds up her relationship. Not doesn't build up, but you can kind of tell where it's going, because she is anticipating a proposal from her rich chaebol boyfriend, and the boyfriend has no such intentions, as becomes very clear very soon. And so she is trying to sort of like figure out what's going on, why isn't he proposing? And in her own delusions, she comes up with excuses for it, right? Because she's like, surely it must be coming. And you can kind of see her strategizing about how to position herself to receive the proposal, because to her that is like a milestone, like some kind of a reward that she's been chasing, and it must be achieved. And of course, as the audience, we are positioned to watch her fall from this situation. Like, we know that's coming, A, because we watched other K-dramas, but also B, this is unhinged, what she's doing. You cannot have a relationship like this.
Indeed. And there's also a really interesting parallel between what she's doing and what the caller in her show and her producer, as we find out later, has been doing as well, which is like expecting a proposal, expecting clarity from her boyfriend, which the boyfriend is not giving. Both Juan, who is Bora's fiance in head, no, her boyfriend, basically played by Hwan Chan-sung, who is so much fun, despite a shitty
so
character. He's
I agree.
Great fun. But anyway, point is that Juwan's character has not given her what she's expecting, but she continues to spin and wait for it. Meanwhile, you have Su-hyuk, who is also not giving his girlfriend what she wants, but kind of also giving it, because we see a parallel track where he buys a ring that he can ill afford, and that he is kind of goaded into buying by Bora. But he did
because
go
of
in
because of that radio show.
because of that radio show, but he did want to buy it, all said and done. So there is
Yeah.
a curious parallel between the sameness and the difference between these two relationships, which once again, it hadn't completely, it was still interesting to me because it was sort of playing on the sameness and the difference in a way that felt like character building. Because all of us in real life, a lot of us have the same reactions, but we just do them very differently. And the and I felt like the drama got that with the relationships.
That's a really good point. I didn't realize that there were parallels, but now that you're pointing out, there absolutely are. Also, you have Hwang Chun Sung's, the character name was Juwan.
Juan.
No, Juwan later on does say that he wanted to marry Bora. Like in his head, despite the fact that he was cheating, in his head, eventually he wanted to marry Bora because she was a sensible choice for him, just like he was a sensible choice for her in their the way they envisioned their lives.
Yeah, yeah.
Attention, listeners. This is your editor again. Okay, something I had forgotten to mention during this segment is that Juwon had actually given Bora sufficient reason to expect a proposal at this point because he had announced in front of their group of friends that they are going to get married within a year or so. So Bora wasn't just expecting it because they were in a relationship, but because Juwon had kind of indirectly suggested that he was expecting it to happen within a certain timeline.
And when you have Su-hyuk's character, he was goaded into buying the ring, but he seemed to want a ring that was not an engagement ring, but kind of like a promise of like maybe something more in the future. This guy was, it's not that he was coming from a place of commitment phobia. He was uncertain very
Yeah.
clearly about this relationship, but neither of the couple were communicating with each other, so it was just not going anywhere. Now, again, when you later on have Isuhyuk and Bora discussing stuff amongst themselves, they are actually very transparent and open about their feelings. Way
Yeah.
before their confession scene, they have always been open, transparent, and extremely vulnerable in front of each other. But like real vulnerability, not the enforced vulnerability that the show does for Bora, not for Su-hyuk. Su-hyuk is given all of the dignity. Bora is given none of the dignity. We now progress onto the breakup. The great breakup. The great breakup happens because Bora finds out that Juyeon was cheating on her, and she's devastated.
But okay, not just finds out, but sees it happen. That is an outstandingly traumatic way. I don't know if there are easy ways to find out that you're being cheated on, whether you're a man or a woman. It does not matter. Whatever gender you are, to find out that your trust has been violated is a very, very heartbreaking experience and traumatic experience. I don't know if you can do it kindly. But there are easier ways to do it than to see it happen in a car in front of you. Like it's a terrible, it's a violation of a scene. It really is. And it does not help that Yi Soo-hyuk is there to watch this explosion, because let's keep in mind that Yi Soo-hyuk and Bora have met under professional circumstances. He works for a publishing company that wants to get this celebrity Bora to write a book for them about having a successful personal relationship. She's supposed to be the dating guru who will write a manual for this publishing firm. She's been presented to him rather as an epitome of a successful relationship, whereas his was the mess, right? Like that his girlfriend sort of broke up with him in a public place. But the thing is that the moment this situation happens, it's not just Bora's personal life falling apart, it's a professional persona falling apart as well. It's brutal. And Wan Chan Song is so good as this arrogant Nojuan who's just like, well, I mean, I don't know why you're here. If you weren't here, then you wouldn't have found out. I was just like,
Like, were you spying on me? How could you come to my place without telling me?
that is a child that you were making out with in your car, you strange, lecherous man. But he's so good as this sleazy. He's actually, throughout the show, something about 2 p.m. These men, I don't know what it was about that idol group, but they know how to act. He's so good. He's great as this like hateful man who is making the most of patriarchy. he's very good in all these funny scenes, particularly towards the end when his character is brought back against all reason. I was hating what was happening to the plot, but I was loving watching him because he's really funny in those bits. But yeah, so like there's this point at which when Bora discovers Joanne is cheating on her and confronts him, he actually puts all the blame on her. I sat through that scene convinced that somewhere in the course of this show, writer Akyong was going to give me the vindication of this woman being able to turn that moment back and slap him with a wet fish to do it. Like a kimchi slap was so desperately required. I did not get that, by the way. I did not get that. The cruelty that she is subjected to at that point, and it's really just the beginning of a juggernaut of cruelty that's going to come Bora's way. She does not get a chance to really cut Juwon down, which is so frustrating to me because she is capable of it. We've seen her do it with Su-hyuk in like one episode ago, but the writer will not give her that situation with Juwon, which just is so frustrating. Okay,
No, but you know why, right? Like you can kind of see the morals at play over here in the writing, in that the drama believes that Bora is equally at fault here. Not that she caused him to cheat, but that she was being calculating about the relationship, and that's a sin for women. Women should not ever think about their advantages in a relationship. How dare she? And that is enough of a sin for what she goes through. Like her punishment is almost necessary in the drama's mind so that she can emerge on the other end and have an actual love story.
What's interesting to me about this whole calculating side of things is that much later on we find out, or maybe we've already found out, I can't remember exactly where, but this comes up again and again in the drama, that Bora's best friend, Yu-jung, is the one who proposed to her husband. It's repeatedly told to us that this is sort of like an impulsive move. And that impulsive move effectively emasculates her husband in their relationship to the point where he's an infant that she's effectively taking care of, and who is like, I don't want to do this, why I have to be in a relationship, this whole childish meanness. He feels emasculated, he behaves in an infantile way. And so not being calculating, while being calculating is awful, as we see, that's why Bora deserves the kind of treatment she gets from Joanne. Not being calculating and being impulsive, even that's not okay.
Because it's not just the impulsiveness, it's the fact that she was the aggressive one in the relationship. She pursued the guy and she took the male decisions in the relationship, and therefore, of course, she deserves what she got in a man-child for a husband.
I think this moment really gives you a, when I was saying that I stayed with this drama because of the analytical side of things, one thing that I am fascinated by is what it wants women to be, what it wants an idealized woman to be. This is impossible as a balance to find. Be weak to this extent, be strong to this extent, be gentle to this extent, be calculating. Oh my God, am I baking a cake or am I being a person?
Yeah, but that's it. Like, you can't find out the magical formula of being the perfect woman until you've been punished arbitrarily for breaking rules you didn't know were there. Like, you just, that is simply how life is. Okay, so Yoo-jung's relationship is very interesting in that I found during the weeks of watching this drama that a lot of viewers found her relationship very, I wouldn't say relatable so much as they found it very real. Like, her issues were very realistic. They were depicted in a realistic way. The fact that she heard her husband gossiping with his bestie, Johan, about how he no longer finds his wife attractive. He doesn't, even want to have sex with her anymore. And it's a moment where in most other dramas, the woman would have been devastated and probably have left the husband. She stays. And I found a lot of conversations in the fandom about how this is a very real thing to do. Because at that point, when you've been married a few years, despite having heard those very hurtful words, at that stage of their life, they were pretty much sexless. And that was not the only thing in their life, so she wouldn't leave him just because of that one thing. I didn't find that super convincing, but fair enough. I'm not married. Who knows? I don't. The fact that she was still very passionate about her husband, deeply in love with him, but she kept feeling like she was not a priority in his life. This is a very real problem. And so we were all waiting to see where it goes. Because the husband was showing zero signs of changing.
So let's just take a moment to look at Yu-jung as a person. She's a successful professional. She works in a magazine and she has her independence in every possible way. Park Seo-jin is also an extremely expressive, beautiful young woman. Like there's vibrancy in her face. She is a full package, right? Who is she married to? She's married to a guy who has a bati haircut, like a bowl haircut. He has no charms that I could see. His only gift seems to be that he owns prime real estate in which he runs a cafe cum wine bar. Now, I do think a man with a cellar full of wine is an extremely important asset to have in a successful marriage. But that said, it cannot be your only selling point. Why is she staying with him?
I will actually disagree with you a little bit here. It's not that he doesn't have any charm, because as a teenager, I could have seen some charm in a guy like him. His nerdiness would have attracted me a lot. And I suspect that Yoo-jung, the way she was written, was attracted by the same thing. The fact that he is funny. And the moments when he is entirely focused on her, he's adoring. And at those moments, you can kind of see what she saw in this guy, that he must have been fun to be around. But also, it's only my teenage self who would have found him attractive.
I was just going to say that this is a woman who did this decision of proposing to him, which she says later on. There's a lovely little monologue that she gets when she says that, I want to see the man that I proposed to, who was this way when he loved me, who left me in no doubts about how I made him feel. That's a really lovely little bit where she actually gives the audience a wonderful little capsule definition of what it is to love somebody.
Agree.
And we don't get any of that. We don't even get flashes of that. Jinho's character, as we see it, is he just is not giving her anything except childishness. What may work for a teenager cannot work for a grown woman. Like, there is a gap, and that gap is not traversed. But ultimately, the interesting part is that I really think all it needed were a couple of scenes. Like, there's a scene in which you see a misunderstanding play out in the cafe, and both Jinho and Yoo-jung are just in the back. It's a ridiculous scene, but you just watch these two at the back. They're in perfect sync as they laugh. You see the shared rhythm of laughter, and that is a relationship for a long time, where you laugh together. You don't, the same jokes, stupid as they are, they work for you. It needed just a couple more moments like that to convince even someone like me, who has an aversion to this creature as much as I do, that there is something there. Because really, there's no telling what we fall in love with. No judgment there. But you got to give me a little bit more. This was just Yoo-jung trying and trying and trying for no good reason.
The thing that really disappointed me about this particular character arc is that Jinho spends the entire duration of the drama hiding things from his wife, acting like she's his mom that he can't, tell his secrets to, that he's going to get scolded if she finds out stuff, he's going to get into trouble. And it's just such a bad way to live. And again, Yoo-jung is not, blameless here. Yoo-jung also acts like his mom in that, to be fair, sometimes you fall into a pattern in a relationship where if the guy is acting like a spoiled child, you end up acting like the mother. I've seen this happen with my friends and their boyfriends sometimes. It's frustrating to watch Yoo-jung being disappointed by him over and over again. And it's not like he doesn't understand why she's disappointed. It's just that for whatever reason, he doesn't seem to think it's in him to give her what she wants, the attention she wants, the devotion she wants at this point. but also just the honesty and the transparency. None of that seems to exist. Instead, the drama, the initial solution to their relationship issues, they give you something around the episode 8 mark, I think, is when, not episode 8, I think this was around episode 9-ish. Jin-ho basically barging into this bar because he's been told his wife is just flirting with another man, and he gets all possessive and aggressive in a stupid situation where it's nothing like that. And Yu-jung is very happy internally. She's not showing it, but she's actually really happy that he did that because she feels reassured, oh, he cares about me after all. And the drama does a voiceover through Bora where she's like, oh, then, she's commenting on different couples at the end of the episode. And on this couple, she says, there is this one couple who have reaffirmed their love. And I'm like, that's not reaffirming love. That's nothing. That's just a stupid jealous outburst. This cannot be. And then I thought, this makes sense. She is still the teenager in love with her teenager boyfriend. This is the teenager reaffirmation, you would want at that age. It's nothing like 2 30-year-olds in a marriage. Yeah. That was a rant. I'm so sorry.
So we've had the breakup.
We've had the breakup.
Which was ugly and horrible.
It was ugly and horrible, and yet, in some ways, we all predicted it. We knew it was coming. And we also pretty much knew Joo-won's character from their first, dining thing that they did in a restaurant where he brought up Elon Musk. Honestly, at that point, I thought
Elon Musk.
No, I thought this writer was making commentary. I thought she was like pinning down the kind of guy he is. And I'm like, oh my God, this was like an
perfect
Elon Musk fanboy. I totally get it. He probably listens to Joe Rogan. I'm just like, oh, I get who he is. And he is exactly that. But after a while, I lost the confidence that the writer was actually making fun of him. And we'll come to why in a bit. Okay, so you have the breakup, and it's heartbreaking. And honestly, this is a part of the drama I was not expecting, but I loved. Like the initial trauma that she had from the breakup, where she seemed to realize that she actually had genuine attachment to the guy. Or we, the audience, realized that the relationship had good moments, that there was a reason that she was with this guy. It was not just, the shininess of the chicken restaurant that his grandmom wanted. And again, like I said, Yoo In-na and tears, man. I don't know how this woman does it. She just somehow extends her hand, grabs your heart, crushes it, and then, gracefully just walks away. And it was brilliant. And I think my favorite scene in the first 4 episodes, I think this was in episode 3-ish, was when Joo-won and Bora have their all-out shouting match in the middle of the road.
The trash.
Yeah, the trash van, the garbage truck. Yeah. But like everything from Bora sort of like lying in her room, basically not eating, her sister getting concerned. And at that point, you can kind of tell she hasn't told her sister what happened. She didn't seem to tell anybody that he had cheated at that point. The initial dates, she was still pretending that, oh yeah, the proposal is coming. When she finally told her friend, she was still talking about, oh, yeah, fine, he's cheated, but, that's good. Now I have something on him. I can control him better. Like, she's going through, like, phases of grief. Like, this is denial stage. I loved the writing at this point because they are really taking Bora through everything from rage, denial, acceptance, all of that. And at one point, she's just this crumpled thing in her room. Her sister gets concerned, contacts her, older sister's boyfriend, Joo-won, and he comes to see her. But Bora thinks he's come because he wanted to see her and talk it out. So they go to this restaurant, and it's like this quiet, this mom and pop shop, and they're just quietly drinking. And Bora can barely, they don't say anything. They're just so depressed, and there's nothing to say. And Bora at one point, because she had put on lipstick before coming out to meet him, she catches a reflection of her face. She gets so angry at that reflection. The fact that she had that lipstick on. I can't tell you, I still get goosebumps about those initial scenes.
It's such a well-written section in the show because, for one thing, it's tapping into, what you were saying about how she doesn't tell any of her friends. I think it showed really well how a lot of women will take the fate of a relationship to be a reflection upon how they are, like how badly they see themselves, how savage they are at themselves. They're blaming themselves, much like Juan blamed her. She psychologically, subliminally, is kind of blaming herself for doing this. So she doesn't want to admit to the world that she's failed as a girlfriend. Of course, the failure is not hers, the failure is of a relationship at large, and that's never one person alone. But these things are things that you arrive at very, very slowly, and it's a painful Sisyphean kind of struggle. You get a really good sense of that. I loved that she will still put on her lipstick when she goes to see him, because that little bit of vanity and that little bit of hope that comes with vanity is there. And that scene in which she looks at her reflection, and it's a smudgy reflection. It's not one of those perfect crystal clear, here's the Photoshop version of a reflection. It's a smudgy reflection, which to me was such a poetic moment, because it's in the blur that you see things clearly. That you made you made up all of this, and it's just a blur at the end of it. And it's a heartbreaking moment, and to go from there, like it's so poetic, it's so lyrical, it's so deep. It's also, you realize the different kinds of love that have existed in this relationship. The It's not that they don't care for each other, it's just going at different directions in an odd way. And that is perhaps a lot more heartbreaking in many ways than even what we were shown of how the actual breakup happens, because this is like, you can almost imagine a what if where they wouldn't be unhappily together. And yet here we are. But to take this sadness, hold on to the emotional truths of this, and then go to the garbage truck scene, which is hilarious. It is hilarious.
They go from depths of despair to the shallowest pettiness. And it's perfect, because that's exactly, again, like, they know each other so well. On the one hand, they barely know each other. They've just seen the polished surface of each other. On the other hand, they've spent so much time with each other. They know each other's habits. They've made, insightful sort of guesses at who the other is, and they're right. And so when he says certain things about her, it cuts her because he's right. And the same thing, the other way around. Like,
with her and him, yeah.
And the thing is, at that point, when they are screaming at each other, they're both breaking down. At that point, Juwon isn't just the shallow cheater Elon Musk fanboy. He's just, I can never put any part of this podcast on Twitter. Sorry. Okay, got derailed. At that point, he's not that character, that funny cheating ex character that she needs to get. At that point, he's a real human being, a real guy she's dated and loved and seen a future with, who is also tired of the sort of performance that they have been putting up all of this while. You get a glimpse of Juwon being a three-dimensional character where he just doesn't want to do this anymore, but doesn't know a way to get out of it.
This trap of male performativity, Chansung gets so well in that scene. I will say this again, what 2PM did in that band.
Dude,
some acting classes were happening while they produced insane songs. Clearly, because how is it? Oktaekyeon, Nijuno, this one, like all of them, how can they act so well? Anyway, but he gets it. He gets that exhaustion. He gets that frustration and that bone tiredness. It's in every part of his body language at that point. And this thing of, this is how you have to be a man. This is how you have to put yourself out as a man. You see the tiredness that comes with it. It's a blip almost in the show, especially in the way the show writes him. But it's such a great moment.
Such a great moment. And I will give, as much as I love the writing of this entire scene, because, come on, effort had gone into the construction from the beginning to the end. But also, the actors were just like pouring their heart into this scene, and it breaks you. Like, even when you're laughing at the two of them getting up on the garbage truck and being like, I'm garbage, no, you're garbage. And it's like just the most hilarious thing. But it's also really sad, because it's sad. Yeah. It's the end. You can at that point, because Bora had been going through like sort of back and forth in her head. Do I can make this work. Somehow I'll get over this. Like she was not letting it end in her head. At that point, you can kind of see, oh, it's ending. That's like the beginning of the realization sort of for her. But that is where this drama, for many, many episodes, stops being good.
So far, the show really was doing everything that I kind of expect a modern romantic drama to do. It had a little bit of silliness, it had a little bit of heart, it had a little bit of sort of, sadness. We had a best friend who had come in, and you have promised a female friendship there. Met her younger sister, and you can see that there's a massive age gap between the younger sister and Bora, and that's creating a little bit of distance and tension. All of the seeds were sown. You've met Su-hyuk, you've met Sang-jin, who is his best friend, and there's a whole workplace sort of, drama / romance hinted at over there as well. So all the seeds are in place. They've been sown. Little bit water has been happening. And now flowering must happen. Instead, wilting happened. Means rotting, fermenting awfulness, because this is where, for reasons I do not understand, the drama decided what we will do to Bora is punish the bejesus out of her. We will take away everything. We will take her dignity. We will take her money. Everything goes.
Yeah. On the one hand, you can kind of see where the root of the idea came from. Bora's relationship, her personal relationship, is also her business. That is where she sort of draws her authority from. In the first episode, when Su-hyuk's, the CEO of his publishing company was introducing the idea of Bora working for them, Su-hyuk very aptly said something about Bora that stuck with me, which is like, what makes her an authority on relationship? That she had had a successful relationship. So if she gets married, does that mean she gets a degree? If she gets divorced, is the degree taken away? I love that because, yes, exactly. What makes her an authority on all relationships? Her deep insight aside, her observational skills aside, she's a great radio host, is what I got from that professional sequence. But he's right. What makes her an authority? But again, that is what makes her an authority. She has had a successful relationship. She's never revealed who her boyfriend is, but it's very clear that, she bases her blog posts and her, radio, the Deborah persona on the fact that she has sort of cracked the code for a successful relationship.
So one of the things that I missed in the writing for her character was that I really would have liked a couple of scenes which could have easily worked within the way it was going, but just where she's observing other people.
Oh, please, yeah.
Like she's drawing.
I know.
She sits and works in a coffee shop, for crying out loud. How hard would it have been to give her these moments where she's watching others? She's depicted at this point, particularly, as such a navel gazing character rather than an outward looking character, that this whole question of what are her expertise, this becomes very pointed and apt because we're not seeing her doing the observations. We're not seeing her listening to others, looking at others. And as it turns out, she's completely blind as a bat for most things happening around her. So then,
Oh, man, yeah, I know. Okay, so she... She is. At this stretch, after episode 4, Bora becomes bizarrely blind to situations around her, including Yu-jung's relationship with her husband, keeps giving her the worst advice, or rather doesn't give her any advice. Just is like, oh my God, you're so in love with your husband. Oh, you guys are having a tiny fight. Oh, her friend's relationship is breaking up. She's going through the worst thing possible, and she's like, oh, you guys had a tiny fight. Oh. Okay, sorry. Coming back to Bora's devastation. In episode 4, she goes to this thing that I think a meet thing, like a dating, sort of a social situation that is being hosted by the magazine.
In the world of the drama, it's bringing together Yu-jung's professional life with Bora's professional persona, and we're introduced to Yu-jung's boss, who happens to be, only because, only in the world
Sang-jin's
of dramas,
ex.
Yu-jung's boss happens to be the ex of the CEO of the publishing company. who is also Yi Soo-hyuk's best friend.
What we're trying to say
It's a small country.
is almost all characters.
Is that everybody's...
Every character is present here for what is about to happen. So what happens here is that her profession, of course, her personal life, kind of the same thing at this point, and her personal life is gone. It's shitty. It's falling apart, and her best friend, who knows exactly what's happening with her, doesn't tell her to opt out of this thing that she's about to do. Instead, it's like, well, I guess you're just going to be hosting an evening of romantic couples meeting. Do well, my friend, and then just like bounces off. And Bora's so like out of her head that she starts drinking champagne. This is something that dramas will only do to a woman. In a professional setting, she knows she's about to go be a host, and she just starts binge drinking. And by the way, this is where it all starts. Bora and alcohol. This never-ending saga that just goes into very dark territories for several episodes. And the thing is, it's unprofessional to do, right? You know you're about to go up on stage. They will never have the male lead of a drama do something like this, unless it's a crime drama and he's about to, I don't know, go shoot somebody up or something. Like, it'll have to be something that boosts his courage to do something massive. It's not going to be something that he goes out on the stage and then plonks on his face and does a underwear reveal, because of course she's a woman. She has to humiliate herself in the worst way possible. It just can't be her just like not being able to speak and then just walking back out. It can't just be that.
You know what really upset me about this scene was how beautiful Yoo In-na looked in that golden dress.
She looks beautiful
She was
throughout.
so stunning. I mean, this woman does not look ugly ever, obviously, but she is the sun in this scene. She is so gorgeous. And of course, the point of the scene, I understand from the writing perspective and the directorial perspective. The whole point is that she's this brilliant, dazzling persona that is broken, like literally falls through black space and thuds to the ground. And who should be there to pick her up, somewhat literally, but Lee Soo-hyuk. Got it, yes.
Yeah.
But like there's a strange kind of I'm very uncomfortable with the sexualizing of the underwear being shown. Like, you didn't need to go there, I feel.
You didn't need to go there, but again, playing devil's advocate to my own argument, I think the reason they went there is because this kind of stuff has often happened in real life and celebrity and paparazzi culture, especially in Korean media, where a woman just like humiliating herself becomes something that they dissect to pieces. If you've shown like a bit of your bra or something, it becomes like this really dirty conversation. And again, I'm not saying this specifically happens in Korea. I'm saying that the Korean culture is familiar with this happening with celebrities. And I think the writer was trying to reflect what usually happens, onto the character. Because Deborah is a celebrity.
Which I get.
But again, from the perspective of somebody who's just watching a woman being a female character that I really like, being cut down. Yeah.
Yeah, it's also the beginning, right? Like, I mean, it also creates a situation where to up this ante, you have to keep doing so much worse.
Yeah.
So much worse, which of course the show does do, because then we sort of see every aspect of her professional as well as personal life being decimated. The radio show is already gone. Her relationship is in shreds. She's bankrupt practically. She loses money because of a con that her sister falls for. I mean, I couldn't think of what else was left to do, frankly.
Okay, and these minor things that they sort of sprinkled along the narrative, where at one point, before the scamming happens and her sister loses her a lot of money, she is comfortably positioned but not rich, even though at that point, given how much royalty she's earned through, she having a bestseller book, like multiple, and hosting a famous radio show, she gets paid quite well. So where is all of this money? And Bora just casually says, oh, well, I wish I wasn't so irresponsible with my money. And what has she done with the money? She's like given a lot to her parents and like this. And so it's not that she's been irresponsible. She doesn't come from a super well-off family. So she has been, making people around her comfortable. But also, it's implied that she's bad with finances because, of course, a woman doing stuff like relationship advice, she's too shallow to possibly be good with finances. And this is bizarre to me because this is a woman who cracked book deals. This is a woman who got herself a radio host. Are you telling me she does... Those influencers who you think are shallow and like really stupid are sharks when it comes to negotiations. That is how they get their brand deals. That is how they get their living.
Though I would like to point out that as a best-selling author, not that I'm a best-selling author, but very few best-selling authors are actually rich in Asia. This is not our life. Actually, they're not rich anywhere in the world. Best-selling author is a lovely term, which means you make very little money.
The impression that I got from her book, like the way they were talking about her books, because it's apparently made so much money for her previous publisher, and Sang-jin expects a lot of money to come from, because he's like, well, this will save us. So that's his expectation. So the way he's talking about it, I'm like, oh, she wrote another secret. That's what happened.
It's like,
just the mega bestseller.
It's like when I was... the first time I watched It's Okay to Not Be Okay,
Yeah.
for the one person in the world who has not watched this show, the protagonist is a children's book author. Fun fact, I have also written children's books entirely by chance, but I've written 3 of them. They're reasonably well appreciated. Let me just tell you, there ain't no children's book author I know who carries herself like the protagonist of It's Okay to Not Be Okay. No, but the thing is, like you said, in the world that we're being shown, she should be much better off than she is shown.
She should be, and also the drama shouldn't like flippantly tell us that she's bad with finances. Like how much it's not even just the fallout of her relationship and her business no longer functioning because it was based on the success of her relationship. The drama keeps revealing aspects to her character or her habits that are very unflattering to her as a person as a whole, and that is deliberate. It's a deliberate decimation of her character.
While all of this is happening to her, admittedly, not that much time is spent with Su-hyuk, but whatever we're seeing of Su-hyuk, he's actually growing. He's learning little by little about the fact, I mean, there is his sadness about the relationship that he has lost, his unsureness about where to go professionally as well. Like, he doesn't agree with what Sang-jin is saying, but he doesn't have a counter to any of the points of what should we do to make the company grow that Sang-jin asks him from time to time. So like there's a little bit, we clearly start seeing that he's on a pattern of growth rather than being broken down. This is going to be amplified max in the next few episodes when the universe continues to be trying, as far as Bora is concerned, and outstandingly generous as far as Su-hyuk is concerned.
Yeah. Agreed. Su-hyuk's character, so we haven't spoken much about his character, and we really should, is very interesting in that you can kind of see the opinions he gives, the insightful things that he has to say are on the positive spectrum. He is sensible. He's observant about the world, and he's not your alpha male protagonist. He's not solving things with riches. He's not very rich. Bora definitely at the start of the drama, and maybe even at the end of the drama, was richer than him. But the point is that he is a guy who sees the world. Like, he's a quiet observer, and this character has a lot of potential when juxtaposed against Bora, who does see the world, but she maybe sees things from a little more surface level than Su-hyuk does. Or that is how they were positioned against each other. Initially, when he meets Bora, he has a bad impression of her, because the first introduction that we know of at this point is him listening to the radio program where she decimates his character, and accurately so, and more accurate she is, the more he hates her. And eventually, when his relationship doesn't work out, his girlfriend breaks up with him, he subconsciously blames Bora for it. Like, it was her advice that made my girlfriend break up with me, and doesn't really take accountability for his own actions or inactions. And that continues for a while. The drama doesn't really address that until much later. And I honestly don't think it was addressed to anyone's satisfaction, at least not mine.
It wasn't addressed. I mean, whatever kind of addressing it got, it was the wrong address.
Yeah. So when he meets her in person, knowing that she's Bora, because they have a couple of meet cutes before which he doesn't know who she is. And he has a very negative impression of her, and she picks up on it pretty quickly. The first time they meet is in a professional setting where Sang-jin wants to have a contract with Bora to write the book, and Bora's sort of sussing out what the publication is like. and Su-hyuk is supposed to be her editor, and they just don't get along. So he challenges her, she challenges him back. There is actually a short exchange which is flirtatious as hell, even though that is, I mean, okay. I was like, okay, chemistry, it exists, yeah. It was good. But then you go on to have several episodes of Lee Soo-hyuk just being a background witness to Bora's continuous humiliation and public humiliation often. And he's the one who saves her several times. And it's not because he's such a generous guy who's going to just, randomly come and rescue anybody and everybody. It's a situation where she is very clearly the damsel in distress and he's the knight in shining armor. And he's supposed to provide that juxtaposition against her ex. So, it's very clearly a sequence built to make Su-hyuk look really great compared to Ju-won, in her eyes and to the audience. But because they spend like a good 4 episodes just focusing on, hey, what's another thing we can slap Bora with that Su-hyuk can witness, and then, if not rescue her, then just come to comfort her. They just kept creating situations where Su-hyuk could provide like a shoulder for her to lean on, quite literally sometimes. But while this is happening, Su-hyuk's own character development is happening in the background, as in it's more character development of a person who's observing something and is sort of trying to figure out where his story fits in there. Like in observing Bora, he's growing. And you can see that maturing happening slightly. And when he actually starts talking to Bora, like Bora and Su-hyuk, eventually when Bora comes out from the depths of her grief. So there is this, another scene that I really liked. During those sequences where she's like deeply grieving and doing stuff like turning up at Ju-won's house in the middle of the night, where also Su-hyuk is magically just there. Middle of the night, man knows where to find his next love interest, just has a weird homing pigeon radar.
I would be very worried about a man who's just popping up wherever the hell I am at 2 a.m. But the patheticness of that moment when she's standing outside Joan's door and just weeping, I was just like, on one hand, we were briefly talking about this, but there's this whole thing of the messiness of Bora. She is an emotional mess. She is a physical mess in many situations. And this is what it takes in a curious way, which is something, and I use the word curious very deliberately. In a curious way, this is what it takes. This emotional messiness, this ravaged condition is what it takes for a woman to feel relatable, a fictional woman to feel relatable. And I kind of feel that this speaks to a larger anxiety in society amongst us, particularly women viewers, that we will need to see this and be like, oh, yeah, I relate.
Yeah.
The crumpling of Bora is just, it's awful to watch, but it's like you need this. Why do you need her to be this broken? Like, why does this level of patheticness? It really speaks to how we treat women outside in the real world. If this is what you're finding relatable, these are the anxieties that you're living with in the real world. They're being realized in an unusual and exaggerated way, perhaps, but the core is very real. And the fact that this is what you're relating to, this speaks to where women stand in patriarchal societies, really.
Yeah, and also to female audiences, why does this feel real? So the word real is constantly used in the fandom during these episodes. How real Bora Deborah is, how real her constant breaking down and sequence of bad decisions and the unending grief. Again, I understand the unending grief. I do not understand the constant string of bad luck, I don't know how else to put it, that she's subjected to.
Yeah.
But here's the thing, audiences, like, because again, whenever I say audiences and stuff, I'm talking about like Twitter threads I've seen, Reddit threads I've seen on this drama. So I've been observing the conversation, and a lot of these conversations kept saying, oh, but this drama is doing something new. They're showing things that are so real. They are so real. The thing is, This is what K-dramas have been doing for decades. Showing women being broken down, going through series of bad lucks, unending bad lucks, while the male lead just watches her misery and comes to comfort her. This is not breaking new ground. This is treading very, very old ground. And you are reacting in 2023 exactly how the audience in 2013 were reacting and the audience in 2003 were reacting, and probably in decades before that. I haven't watched dramas that far back. My point being, what you think is real, listen, anything could be real, but what feels resonant to you, question that for a second. Why is this what is so resonant to you? Why is this the fact that the woman is not just going through a terrible breakup, that she is going through, professional devastation, and also, mind you, something that we haven't mentioned yet, because of the way that gala night went, she said some stuff about men being bastards, which South Korea being a very anti-feminist society became something, and also this was a reference to stuff that has happened to women in South Korea. Celebrities who have said anything about men, even slightly, they've been labeled feminist and therefore cancelled. This has happened repeatedly. So I do believe this part of it, the entire internet coming to hate on Bora, was very much something that the writer wanted to put in to reflect this kind of stuff. And I liked it. I liked that. But they didn't even, that just kind of they faded in the background after a while, which again is fine. So this is the problem. The reason I kept watching this drama was because they were simultaneously doing the worst thing and the best thing. They were showing Bora after weeks of sort of isolating herself, coming out into the world and finding that people have kind of forgotten about her and the whole thing, months of isolation actually. And that's great. That show us that. This is exactly how real life works. People have moved on to other conversations. She's not that important anymore. She can come out without being hated actively. And I love that. But simultaneously, they were also showing her just be a dish rag.
A dish rag, but also so shallow. This is what bothered me more than the dish ragginess. For example, when she tells Su-hyuk that her grand plan for the book, which will end up being an essay, is to give a manual on how to get a guy back. Step 1, become pretty.
Oh, yeah. I forgot about that.
I mean, come on, really?
She was trying to make it sound very deep. It wasn't deep. She literally meant going to a cosmetic clinic and getting work done. I mean,
yeah.
What?
Are you serious?
She joined a gym where she was called Skinny Obese. Skinny Obese.
Oh, God. And then the real health scare that she has, that if she drinks again,
is completely laughed at.
Is completely set aside. She's constantly drinking. She's self-sabotaging. And I really wondered a lot of when people, when you're reading about people saying that, this is so real, are women really self-sabotaging this much? Is this what we're doing to ourselves? That is terrifying to me at a different level, quite frankly.
I used to think that we liked watching dramas where women were ground down to dust because she would rise from that dust like Phoenix. Yeah, I thought that rising was what we waited for. But watching Bora Deborah, I got the sense, because till episode 8, all that was happening was Bora getting slapped on the face repeatedly, metaphorically. I got the sense that people like that. They were watching for that. And I'm like, what, did I misunderstand human beings so deeply? Just what? Okay, let's talk about a positive aspect, because episode 8 was, again, one of those bright, shining points in this drama, which had massive ups and downs. So in episode 8, a couple of different things happens. For one thing, she puts her relationship with Ju-won finally to rest on her own terms. I love that sequence. She meets him at a cafe. Yeah. And she tells him, it's okay. I'm not here to confront you. Just don't worry. And it's a cafe that they used to come to together. So she knew his schedule. So Su-hyuk and Bora waited on a Sunday for this guy to come so she could kind of go and have that conversation, because she had done enough damage because of her stupid decisions before that he's probably blocked her. Like she didn't seem to have any other. But also she was preparing for this moment. She wanted to dress perfectly. She wanted to look perfect. I got all of that. I understood all of that.
Yeah.
Like she wanted this to be on her terms because the breakup before had not gone. So she needed to regain herself. So she goes in, she has this very calm conversation. It's actually really beautifully done. And Juwon is left just with his mouth hanging open and she walks out. It's so satisfying to watch. It's great. But you know what undid it? Juwon looks out of the window and she goes and meets Lee Su-hyuk, and it's her walking away with Lee Su-hyuk, another man. Clearly, that was what actually got to him.
So when you were talking about all the stuff that happens to Bora, like, she's getting sort of thrown into worse and worse circumstances. There are, though, in the middle of all of these, there are a few moments. The getting pretty one was not cool. That did not work. That was also the point at which there was that really controversial bit with the Auschwitz reference, which led to a part of that part being snipped, I think, in America, in the American Prime.
No, it's everywhere. It's been
it is?
snipped.
Yeah.
I went and checked. I had friends in other countries check. It's been snipped everywhere on Amazon Prime. But it's been snipped like in a really bad way. Like if I was editing it, I could have snipped it perfectly out. I can't believe they just did this really dodgy cut. But anyway, leaving the aesthetics of it out, that was the episode 9. Like the one of the complete fall of grace after the real niceness of episode 8, which let's finish up why episode 8 was so great.
Yeah. Before the highlight of episode 8, I want to go to the second closest highlight for me, which is Bora peeing on the street. It's so juvenile, but so funny.
I loved it, especially with the way Yoo In-na went about the whole thing. Like her reaching nirvana when she finally finds a place to go. That was great.
It was so good.
I relate
This
with.
I felt. This was real.
But of course, I must be the party pooper and point out that there were no equivalent embarrassing moments for Lee Su-hyuk like this. Like, this guy he is apparently also going through heartbreak at the same time as Bora is, but because he's supposed to be the stoic guy who doesn't communicate his feelings, doesn't express himself well, which is also completely runs counter to the fact that the guy expresses himself really well, is very much in touch with his feelings, but just not apparently about romantic stuff.
But I feel like, again, I don't think this actually came through, but I kind of gave myself the argument that maybe it's that he's being able to express himself when he's with Bora.
That can be a really good. See, again, not okay. Hold on. No, you were saying something else. He's being able to express himself only with Bora, but what I saw was him being able to express his grief and all of the tumultuous feelings you go through Bora's journey. Like he is living a breakup vicariously, because it's like he can't go through that himself completely, but like because he doesn't have access to those sections of his feelings. But because Bora's going through it and he's watching her go through it, that helps him process his own emotions.
Once again, we're seeing him change a little bit in like little moments. You see him shifting a little, but also like seeing her and being with her makes him understand himself and thus become a little more articulate about himself and how he wants to present himself. Like, which is why, like, much later, towards the end, there's a situation in his workplace where there's a young woman who's being essentially bullied in an odd way by her colleagues because of a set of misunderstandings. We'll get there later. Lee Su-hyuk, earlier on in the show, has found ways to just cut himself off from the office conversations. He doesn't interfere. He doesn't he's just sort of slinking away into one corner or another room so that he doesn't have to be part of this. This is the one time, after having been through everything that he has with Bora, that he steps up and speaks. And he says the right things. He says what he should be saying as a leader, but also with a sense of empathy for what this young woman is going through. It's a good moment for him. But listen, I'm a softie. I watch romances. I love romances. I was there for an excellent kiss that ended episode 8. Not drunk, Not, I loved that they were sober. I loved they were reaching for each other. I loved that their mouths moved because God knows that often does not happen. Oh, my heart went pitter patter, and I was
It was perfectly done. It was also, it was really well timed. By the way the story was going, Bora had finally gotten over her ex. While Isuhyuk was in her life, the two of them were kind of really being sort of support for each other, but mostly him as a
yeah,
support for her. And they had sort of started working together on a project together, but they were not really in a space to have a romance. And
yeah.
I also heard a lot of grumblings in the fandom being like, why is it taking so long? The romance still hasn't started. We're already past halfway mark in the show, because everybody knew it was a 14 episode show. It's already episode 8. And then, of course, after she has that excellent second breakup with Jiwon and works out, they end the episode with the two of them just spending time together, being vulnerable together, and then at the same time reaching for each other. It was perfect. It was
It was
so
perfect.
good. And these were two mature adults finding each other attractive. I
Yeah.
was just so happy. There was just this so good. And then episode 9 happened.
And then episode 9 happened. So this is one of my many grouses with this relationship is just that when I don't mind that the build up was as long as it was, frankly. I liked the fact that they showed both Bora and Su-hyuk working through their older relationships and the longings and lingerings and doubts, etc., etc. I liked that they did that. But to set that spark and then to have that sort of awareness of one another to come up repeatedly in conversation, but no physicality whatsoever. And in fact, dialing back as far as possible to suddenly go to this semi working, completely platonic space was just mystifying to me. Like, I did not get it. Like, there's a point at which she says that she wants to have a relationship with Su-hyuk, which is like Mulder and Scully. Scully, Mulder, Scully, did she have a baby with Mulder? I found it just very jarring to go all the way there and then to dial back to friendship.
So I don't mind, because K dramas have trained me well. I know that if episode 8 is giving me a kiss, there will be 4 episodes of no touching afterwards.
No touchy.
No touching. And
I'm thinking
that's
Mrs. Queen
fine.
at this point. Sorry.
Yeah. Oh, dude, everybody gets that reference at this point. It's fine. I'm fine with them suddenly dialing back and being like, we are only friends. The problem that I had was the scene, the morning after scene, where they meet at the
God,
cafe
yeah.
because they're supposed to meet for work. And this entire situation is made 100 times worse by the queen of miscommunication, Yu-jung, trying to help her friend and sort of telling Su-hyuk something to the effect of, oh, she thinks that was a mistake, so just ignore it, don't talk about it. So he gets offended. And then when Bora comes, by the way, Su-hyuk does this thing, I completely forgot about it, and it irritated the heck out of me. He insults her throughout the drama, just tiny insults. Insults like if she says, well, I'm so pretty, he'll be like, no, you're not, you're so ugly. It's a childish thing to do. But he does that repeatedly throughout the drama. So it continues on till the very end. Like, I should have made a list of the insults he does because it so irritated me so much. But just random things. Like, anytime she makes an assertion, he has to disagree with her. Just, he doesn't know the context, anything, he will just say, no, you can't. If she says, oh, I can seduce, men like through flirting, he'll be like, no, you can't. Like, of course, the drama plays this as a joke with her kind of showing the moves that she would make and him being like, it's not affecting me, and then like staying awake at night thinking of her. That's hilarious. That's funny. But most of the time when he does it, he just does it almost he takes it as his personal job to pull her down. Like, anytime she says anything that is slightly prideful, he'll be like, no.
There's something very adolescent about it, right? Like deeply adolescent.
It's not just adolescent, man. Like, because it's something that should be left left in adolescence. It's when you're doing this as a 30-something-year-old man, and you're repeatedly doing this with a woman who has had a successful career. She's made something of herself. And yes, she is silly and prideful about certain things, but she is, a person of substance.
I think my problem more about that tactic is that at the stage at which he's doing this to her, if there's anyone who knows how vulnerable Bora is, it is Su-hyuk.
Yeah.
You're able to talk, both of you, about what you want from each other in ways that are not direct, but both of them are clearly understanding what's expected of one another. So, like this, from episode 8 till 10, these two episodes basically are a strangely frustrating bit, because on one hand you do see their relationship deepening. Like it's an emotionally richer relationship, and it's so different from how she was with Juwon. It's they're talking, they're communicating, despite the games that they're playing. It's all come together. So, which was why I'd also said that I really think that it should have ended at episode 10. We would all might have been
We
happier
would have
for
been
it.
so happy, dude. Seriously, I agree. So, what happens after that is they have that awful conversation. Like, before the whole my step is to get pretty situation, they have this really awful conversation where she is just, she comes back from the bathroom and finds him sitting at the cafe table, and they're both really awkward about the fact that they had kissed, and they don't know how to react to it. But now that queen of miscommunication has passed through, Su-hyuk takes like a sort of salty defensive stance, and Bora does what Bora has been doing for all of the episodes before that. She just runs on and says the stupidest things out of awkwardness. You can kind of see that she's reacting out of awkwardness, trying to sort of like reduce her level of embarrassment, but she's making the situation worse. And it's a bad situation.
Secondhand embarrassment has never been stronger than it is in those scenes. Oh my
I
God.
skipped that scene forward, and then much later at the end of the episode, I'm like, I've seen the worst, I can go back. And so I like just watch it fractionally. I kept pausing. It was so bad. I felt bad for it, and it was like such a downer, because before that, even through all of the stupidity that has been happening with Bora constantly getting drunk and embarrassing herself, and by the way, alcohol is a huge problem here. Like okay, one diversion. The moment the fact that Bora has alcohol dependency, and Bora does have alcohol dependency, throughout the drama, she can't even give it up once she's been told stop drinking alcohol. And that is the definition of freaking dependency. I saw a couple of people try to bring it up, that this thing, that the grief was pushing her towards alcohol, that's being shown in the drama, but the drama doesn't quite address the fact that it's a problem. And that is a problem. I saw other people come in and be like, you don't understand the culture. The culture is that she drinks. Yeah, nobody around her was drinking and like blacking out every other night. No, the culture wasn't doing that. Just not everything is Asian culture. Okay, like the number of times I've been told by people on the internet that I, a South Asian living in India, don't understand Asian culture is way too many, guys. Is way too many. And I'm not a Korean. I'm not saying that I understand all Asian cultures. What I do understand, however, is that there is social drinking, which is culturally enforced in offices, after parties, all of that stuff. And then there is willingly going out and dunking like 10 bottles. If you guys have watched My Liberation Notes, you had a character there with alcohol dependency. Nobody made light of that. That was alcohol dependency. He had a long journey to, like, they showed how he went down that path and how he tried to get out of it. Now, you might not be convinced that he just cleaned up his act at one point, but whatever. The point is that nobody makes light of it when you show alcohol dependency like that in a male character who's been devastated because of something that's happened in his life. This is a woman who's been devastated by something that's happened in her life. Her turning to alcohol to numb her grief, this is not abnormal. I'm not arguing with the drama showing that. But then don't come to me and say that this is culture. This is not culture. This is a woman in grief depending on alcohol so she feels less grief. It's a problem that none of the people, none of the other characters around her seem to notice, comment on, and help her out of. Even Su-hyuk was like, oh, hey, aren't you not supposed to drink? She's like, I can't have this conversation without a drink. Glug, glug, glug. And he's like, okay, fine then.
Everybody forgives a drunk man in a way that they do not forgive a drunk woman. That is also welcome to
That's
patriarchy.
true.
But what is happening with Bora is not as simple as either sexism or as culture. It is a really messy mix of toxicity, grief, and alcohol dependency. And it really bothered me that the drama did not take even one beat to sit with this. It kept making it a device with which it could poke fun at Deborah. And fortunately, because of Yoo In-na's performance, we end up laughing with her rather than at her.
At her.
But the writing is not making it easy. The writing is doing the opposite. The writing is using this to actually belittle her character in different ways. That was what my problem was with the alcohol dependency part. Also, that there isn't a parallel for Su-hyuk. Like
Exactly.
there isn't anything that weakens him. There's no Achilles heel of any sort that we're given. Like somewhere along the way, this drama does not actually believe in the equality between men and women characters, and that is truly, truly depressing to me. Did it stop me from watching?
Of
No.
course not. But also, as an addendum to that, I think it believes in something worse. It believes that you cannot have true equality between partners. One partner will always have dominance over the others. And you see this in all of the pairings in the drama. You see this in Yoo-jung and her husband's drama, where she's the dominant force. You see this in Bora's sister, Bomi's relationship with Jin-ho, where she is the dominant force. And Jin-ho is the pursuant, but he's also like the worshipper. Like he puts Bomi on a pedestal. And then you also see that with Sang-jin and the very, very young intern working at his company, Uri, sorry, and she again worships him. He is the one with the upper hand in that relationship. There is no
There's no
equality in any
equality.
of now where there could have been equality is in a relationship with Sang-jin and his ex-wife, who figure out their issues and are at a place where they can be friends. And you see a situation, a very awkward situation, where his ex sort of like extricates him, sort of stands up for them and extricates him. I loved it. I was rooting for that couple. Part of me was like, yeah, that's a relationship where when they finally communicate, you can see it can be really healthy and they can be great together. But no, that would be way too equal for this drama. So you don't have that.
That ex-wife character is such a cool character in many ways because of that scene. Also, the fact that he has no idea why they broke up, and she has to sort of years later be like, "You didn't love me." Like, hello, that central thing. She's a fantastic character, but the drama does not allow her to be as cool as she could be. Like the ex-wife, when we're first introduced to her, she's basically a bitter divorcee who takes out her rage at her marriage having fallen apart on her office, specifically Yu-jung. This is something that we're told of again and again. We're also shown it in different ways. She gets a much better redemption arc, but the redemption arc does not explain that behavior before, which is really troubling, by the way. And it was unnecessary. It was a completely unnecessary detail. It's almost
Yeah.
as though the drama thought that it would bring Sang-jin and this woman back together, but then at the last minute decided no, the nubile 20 something employee that he's got is a much better candidate for this romance than the grown, mature woman who has evolved and become his equal. That workplace romance was so uncomfortable, so uncomfortable
It
because
was very
it's
weird. I thought for like almost 13 episodes that we were going in one direction, which is that Sang-jin realizes that this very young intern has a crush on him. And because he's very sweet and doesn't want to hurt her feelings, tries to like get around it in some ways, but keeps giving her hopes accidentally. And then eventually he addresses the problem and then he's trying to be kind. I thought this was a side plot in his actual romance with his ex-wife. I thought because Su-hyuk comes to him at one point and is like, this is not what I think it is. Like, you're not dating our young intern because clearly that is the wrong thing to do. And he's like, no, that is not it. But then eventually.
But then he does.
Exactly that. He does exactly that. He starts dating her. And she actually goes through bullying because before they start dating, there is a point where the entire office believes that she and Sang-jin are dating and they bully her. They corner her and they embarrass her.
It's shown as bullying. Like the structure of that
bullying.
scene
It's framed as it.
is framed exactly as that. Like there are all of these office workers that surround her in a semicircle. Behind her is the counter to the little kitchenette area in their office. She is hemmed in. She is literally like, it's the Chakrabuhu kind of situation. Like she's absolutely cornered.
Yeah, she has no way to get out of there.
So totally cornered, and she's backed up literally against a wall, and they are all ganging up on her. You feel her solitariness and you feel her helplessness so much. And it's interesting contrast to see that at that point, Su-hyuk will listen, but he doesn't go in to save her. He doesn't break up the scene. He doesn't walk in. Just him walking in would have broken up that scene. But he does nothing. Fortunately, like a little bit later, he does have his moment of redemption, which I was talking about earlier, when he sort of, sets
But it's interesting to note that, like, Su-hyuk does his thing where he's like, don't bully our employee. Like he gives a speech and it was a very effective speech. But the real reason the office workers come and apologize to her is because she makes it clear that she was the one with a crush on the boss. The boss, like they were not dating, nothing inappropriate happened. And everybody feels very apologetic for having done that. So they sort of like apologize because in their head they're like, oh, so you guys aren't actually dating. That was a crucial point for why the office was placated, because they had misunderstood
and
the
rightly
situation.
so, right? Like because there is a reason. The show makes it seem as though not having workplace romances is just a unnecessary boorish little idiosyncrasy of Sang-jin's, and not a singular abuse of power and an impossible situation in particularly this power dynamic of an intern and a CEO. And here's the thing, I'm all for push boundaries with romances. The whole idea of a romance is exotic and charming to us because it's disruptive, because it goes and it talks about valor and rebellion and bravado and individual, a person standing up for the things that they care about. There's something incredibly disruptive about the basic idea of a romance. So, yes, go ahead, find the transgressive bits that you want to reach out for. However, the older man and the child woman is not the transgression that we want to normalize. That's all I'm saying.
I would have loved if Sang-jin, instead of initially rebuffing her, if he had been like, fine, let's go out. And they had gone for a few movie dates, they had gone to restaurants, and then she had realized that he was not what she had thought he was. In that her idea, and let Sang-jin have done that so her drum would break. Yeah, like so that her illusions would break. Like, because he has been a player on the field for a very long time. The drama keeps wanting us to think of Sang-jin as this sort of the naive boss who doesn't really understand how his, what his workers want. He's not naive at all. Dude has played the field. He knows women pretty well. He understands relationships pretty well. You can see that from the advice he's given to Su-hyuk, many times. So he is not the one who's confused in a situation where a much younger woman has a very obvious crush on him. So in that situation where if he has a fondness for her and wants her to get over this, and clearly because she wants a career in publishing and he realizes she doesn't have the, maybe the education or the background to find a place in another publishing house, maybe he decides to, best way to deal with this is to, maybe it's an unconventional way to do it, but let's show the girl that what she thinks in her head is going to happen is not the reality. So they go out, they date, and she realizes that, oh, this is not what I thought it was going to be. And then she walks away having grown up a bit. I would have loved to see that.
I would
am
have
not
loved that.
against. Yeah, I'm not against like much older characters dating much younger characters, so long as they're all adults, please. But I am against romanticizing this kind of pairing where this girl's obvious crush, her first love, also the guy who saved her by giving her a job, like there is a lot of gratitude, a lot of awe involved here.
It's a messy relationship.
It's a very
It's
messy
too
relationship. If the
messy.
drama had even hinted that this is something that Sang-jin is going into, knowing that it's not going to work out in the long run, something to give us a hint that there is character growth
It's
beyond
the
the ending.
opposite.
It's
It's
not.
the
It's a happily ever
opposite. The
after.
last thing we have, I think one of the last things we get of Sang-jin and Uri is him saying that he's going to kiss her in the stairwell.
Well, he chooses, like, they don't show us which of her wishes he chooses, but that is the obvious one that's.
It's suggested. And
It's suggested.
I just got like my blood just curdled into whatever curdles fastest. I don't know. It was horrible.
Yeah. So that is the other secondary couple. I think we have like sufficiently laid that to rest.
So let's get back to Bora and Su-hyuk and the aftermath of a case that we really, really liked.
At this stage, kiss has happened. They have gone to Mulder and Scully space, and neither are very happy about it because they have feelings. But at least this has allowed them.
I mean, if someone kissed me like that and I kissed them like that, I would definitely not want to go back to platonic if we're talking realism. Thank you very much.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
yes.
But also, the reason dramas often do this is because it allows protagonists to continue on a level of friendly intimacy without absolute vulnerability. Like you're not opening up your feelings and being like, here, this is how much I like you. You're like, oh, that was a mistake. That was silly. Oops. Let's go back to being friends. Look how much fun we were having when we were friends. So that's what they go back to, and it's awkward. But
I mean, it's damn awkward, but it's also, honestly, in an imaginary world, isn't that like a great place for a relationship where you're still flirting and testing each other out and you're having fun with this without having any of that
So
uncertainty
much.
of, does that person care about me? Am I coming on too strong? There ain't no coming on too strong when both of you like each other. Like it's such a lovely space.
It is a lovely space, but also the magic of this structure of storytelling is that even though you say you've gone back to being friends, you are no longer friends, and you're wearing the wolf skin, or sorry, the sheepskin of being friends, but inside you're wolves. As in, like your relationship has changed fundamentally. You are flirting with each other, pretending that you're friends, and everybody knows that. It's even you know that.
You were instinctively on the money when you said wolf skin because Yi Soo-hyuk ain't a sheep. That man can wear clothes. There is something about that rangy figure. Whatever you give him to wear, he looks so lovely. So lovely. And there's a grace that athletes have about the way they carry their body. He has that. Of course, I looked him up, and he used to be a baseball player. Athleticism brings a certain kind of physical grace, really. It's not just about fitness. The point is that, yeah, they're in this platonic but not friend zone at all. It's
Like they
very
know
much.
what's going on. They're not saying it, they're not taking the risk to say it, but they both know what's going on, and it's great because this is when they actually ease into the flirting stage of the relationship. It's some of my favorite scenes are in there because the two of them are adults and they flirt like adults, and it's
Yeah.
joyous to watch.
It's delicious, it's grown up, it's cheeky, it's everything. So why on earth did the ex have to be brought back?
Because there was no conflict. Episode 9 is dodgy, but episode 10, 11, 12 actually goes into this whole state where the two of them are flirting. It's cute, it's happening. They are like inches away from confession. They have really great understanding between them. They open up to each other about their childhood. Bora meets Su-hyuk's parents, and the parents are lovely. It's so great.
They're lovely, and what a nice little detail to say that his parents, his mother divorced his father, and that his stepfather is someone that he is close to quite clearly. And he says that, that's left me with certain issues as far as expressing himself in romantic relationships is concerned, but it's also clearly given him a really lovely model for having hope that you can find love in different people and more than once.
Yeah.
So like that, I really loved that little bit. I also liked that normalizing of an unusual family in that
Yeah.
sense,
I also really like this one detail that they have in that conversation post cinema theater when they're walking out and they're talking about their, childhood and all of that. And Su-hyuk is like, well, like she divorced my father, and it's because I watched that happen as a child. He basically sort of subconsciously understood that relationships aren't necessarily permanent, and that impermanence became part of something that he still has in the back of his mind. And Bora says, well, you had that thing where you witnessed a divorce. On the other hand, I went throughout my childhood watching my mother stay in a horrible relationship, and they didn't divorce. So children who watch their parents stay in a relationship that really should have ended have a different trauma.
I loved
And which is
that.
why, and
Yeah.
she sort of psychoanalyzes herself. She's like, maybe this is why I really needed things to work out with Joo-won. I really needed that. And that's why I was obsessed with it. And I love that because this is where Bora's insight comes in. She also says this other thing where she's like, do you realize? Because before he tells her about his mother's divorce, he's like, do you realize, because he was talking about his stepdad, that you called your mother Omma, but you called your father Abuji, which is like a more formal way of saying Appa.
Formal.
Yeah, and he's like, oh, I didn't realize I do that. But then he explains it's because he came into my life a little later because, and I love that. See, this is it. When the drama calms down and stops pitting like cannonballs after cannonballs at Bora, Bora suddenly starts being really great, insightful, clever. Oh my God, like there are these amazing scenes where Bora is just the chillest person around. When her sister falls for a scam, and it's the kind of scam where I actually understand her falling for it. It came it's a phone scam. Somebody imitates her sister's number and profile and texts her, and she thinks that her sister's asking her to send money, a lot of money is sent. And again, it's a situation where Bora could have asked her to send money because she was house hunting for a new, and she's like, I need to, put down the money right now. So it's not a situation where her sister would have suspected it. So again, forgivable. Now, in another drama, Bora would have come and screamed at her sister. But Bora's not that character. She saw the situation, understood that this was a scam anybody could fall for. And she didn't say any. She's like, and at one point somebody's like, why didn't you, scold her, scream at her? And she's like, well, I cannot say anything worse to her than what she's telling her herself. And see, these are the moments that make you love Bora. How is it that the writer who wrote these scenes also wrote the rest of this drama?
The problem, of course, is that these scenes are too few.
Yeah.
And I genuinely don't think that we would remember them as
clearly.
we would remember, or rather, as clearly if it wasn't Yoo In-na performing
I
them.
agree.
I really think that has a lot to do with it, because the thing is that she makes the brokenness charming, and she makes strength charming as well. Like, she just makes everything charming is the bottom line that I'm going for. But she makes these scenes really stand out. So you kind of forget the other stuff that she has been put through and that she is doing, because these sort of become gleaming examples. But then when you're actually putting the whole trajectory together, these are too few. They're too scattered and they're too few. And it's frustrating because it's like all the other stuff undercuts this again and again. Like the stupid bits about the gym, for
Yeah.
example, the way we've talked a lot about her and her alcohol relationship, but that, like, these really undercut. The other scene that I quite liked, one of these, all these quiet scenes when Su-hyuk's girlfriend, she meets
Oh,
Su-hyuk's
yeah.
girlfriend outside the publishing office, and it's a quiet scene, and it's very much her championing Su-hyuk, and sort of, and it's a shift because until then she's been on the girlfriend side in many ways because the girlfriend was the producer, one of the producers on the radio show. But it's not so much siding in a way that is unsympathetic to the other woman. It's a graceful position, and this sense of you can be graceful and empathetic with the ex of the man you love, that in itself, that you can be a friend and you can be in between and you can stand for all these things and not be catty, not be like not have a sort of bratty fight in the middle of the thing, like he's mine and you hurt him or some such nonsense like that. There's so much elegance in that scene, especially since we've seen her doing rather strange things on the street. This was such a great example of her being mature, of her knowing, even when there's a point at which Su-hyuk decides that he's going to see his ex-girlfriend rather than ignore her when she's sort of, called out to him, reached out to him rather, in one point. And Bora can see that this is a bad idea. She does whatever she can to stop him, which is also quite funny what she does. But, she makes that point, but then she steps back. And just this trusting that I know that this is not the right thing to do, but he has to make his own mistakes, and it's okay. I'll be here.
Yeah.
It's such nice moments like this, but like I said, they're just too few and far
The
between in
other
the show.
really great moment was when she accepted a invitation to her friend's wedding. Now, her friend had actually called Yu-jung to be like, I hope Bora doesn't come. I can't invite her. She's, just broken up. I don't want that bad vibe at my wedding. But then Yu-jung has her on the speaker, and Bora's like, oh, don't worry. I'll come. You
I'll
want
be
me there. So I'll come. And but the thing is, she knows that going in there, given the kind of friend she has, being a single woman who's had like a public fallout, basically, her career's devastated. She's no longer in the position she was with her friends before. So she goes in there knowing that she's going to face this alone. Like when Su-hyuk is like, do you want me to come along? She's like, yeah, come along. But she doesn't actually expect him to come along. So the next morning when she's going
Yeah,
out
yeah.
she's fully prepared to go out by herself. It's just that Su-hyuk turns up. I liked that. The fact that she was ready to face
Yeah.
that situation on her own. She didn't actually need Su-hyuk to be there. The fact that he voluntarily comes later.
And she does tackle much of it on her own. He shows up, he does, and he's very handy
Yes,
in more ways than one at the scene. But like before that, before him showing up, she does navigate some pretty tricky territory with grace on her own. And it's such a sharp contrast to her at that magazine event, for
Yeah.
example. Again, there's photographs, again, there's public persona, again, there's like, expectations. The fact that she has fallen from grace and she has risen, that, she makes that point quite well. So when Su-hyuk does show up, he isn't necessarily being the knight in shining armor that he was in the earlier.
Yeah, she can stand on her own feet at this point. Which, yes, you're right.
She's fine. She doesn't need saving. She doesn't need saving in the photo shoot wedding situation, which is also very funny because the couple that are supposed to get married just have a meltdown. Which I'm telling you, this show is not about marriages. It is in fact a PSA to not marry.
That can well be, man. It's just until the very last episode, I would say this entire drama is about how people put up facades about their relationship, but it's nothing like what it looks like from the outside.
and everybody's going through some horrible shit in their romantic lives. That's how it comes across with every couple that's introduced. And I'm all for it because talk about reality. That's reality to me.
That's reality.
Yeah. Like the best couples that I know are people who, like the ones that, like, again, from the outside looking in, the best ones, they also have a lot of issues. But the only difference is that they communicate very openly and they get through it because they communicate really openly. Otherwise, it just doesn't work. So the thing that they were going for with Su-hyuk and Bora talking so much, and they do actually talk a lot. They exchange ideas and feelings and observations throughout the drama. I like that aspect so much because, yes, get into a habit of communicating. Don't fall into the trap of just not saying what you mean. So
Yeah.
Bora and Su-hyuk, flirtation best at this stage. And then the final 2 episodes happen.
I'm going to say that, we'll discuss this perhaps at the end of the year, but I'm putting a pin on this one as the worst ending in a drama in 2023. Endings are complicated for dramas in my limited experience because, and I understand, honestly, just from a basic writing and storytelling perspective, telling a story over 14 hours, 16 hours, it is not easy. It's extremely hard. And especially when you do this sort of real life is not real life, but whatever, the real life of these characters is unfolding before an audience's eyes. They have changed, the things have sort of, other challenges have crept up and meandered away from the original point. To come back and sort of tie it up suddenly, it can be a challenge. So I'm very sympathetic to that. However, bringing back the X in the middle of this and just being like everyone regressing by 6 episodes essentially is not the answer. And I'm personally of the belief that the only reason that this happens, no, there are 2 reasons why this happens. One is either the writer or the writer and the 2 directors are fans of Chansung and just needed to bring him back. My other theory is that they basically just wanted scenes in which there's like a whole group of people behind windows peering out at fights happening. That's what's basically holding these last 2. Like, there are the most ridiculous confrontations that happen when Juan basically comes back and says that I would like to marry you. I am here. Just when Bora has literally got all the things that were falling apart at the start of the show, they have come back to her. She's got her radio show back. Her book or essay is on its way to getting completed. There is a man who is in her life and may not officially be a boyfriend, but he is very much in that territory. Everything is set. All is going well. Literally in the same, it's a curious parallel because the same radio show format that led to Su-hyuk's relationship getting savaged, essentially, that is where Juan re-enters our woman's life. Now, him wanting to re-enter when she is back up, that makes sense. He was always calculating and figuring that she is the most sensible choice for him. What makes less sense is that she opens up and allows him to occupy a space in her life. Like, there's this really awkward scene in a cafe where he barges into a meeting that Su-hyuk and Bora are having and gives the impression that Bora and he are going to go out on a date. This results in Su-hyuk having some existential crisis and curling into his shell, whatever. But why is Bora like, yeah, you just give this impression, why don't you? She barely, she could have shut
She
him
just
up.
looks around, she rolls her eyes a bit, but she doesn't say anything. It's like some kind of a peculiar, I don't know, restraint is holding her back, tradition, and I cannot be impolite, some bizarre heaviness of culture that's holding her back from saying what she needs, and she just needs to say, I had no plans of meeting you. What are you talking about?
You have barged into my work meeting. Please go away. And this is the same woman who we will see confidently expressing her love for the man that she is now in love with, who, by the way, responds with silence.
Not even silence. He looks away and she's like, are you going to say nothing? And he keeps looking away. I wanted to shoot
What was that?
this guy.
Just what is going on? Where is your brain? Oh my, it made no sense. The people who've been talking to each other, by which, by the way, we're talking about Su-hyuk. This is a point. There's a scene in which Bora effectively does her confession scene and tells Su-hyuk that she's in love with him, and Su-hyuk's response is complete silence, even though he is batty and obsessed with her. And we basically find out that he's been obsessed with her for years he's been in love with her ostensibly, but he says nothing, even though we have literally got 2 episodes showing us what a great rapport these two characters have. Similarly, we've established that Bora is now confident and able to hold her own and da, except when Ju-won is sitting there and essentially sabotaging her relationship with Su-hyuk, she has no response. She just goes like completely quiet and demure. It's baffling.
So this is where the drama starts feeling contrived as hell. Like, again, you can say all stories are contrivances of the mind, but that's not what I mean. I mean, you are deliberately regressing characters, regressing relationships. You're deliberately undoing character growth just so you can prolong this confession situation. Because episode 13 starts with, or rather episode 12 ends with, Su-hyuk preparing to confess to Bora. Okay, like he has the flowers, he has the ring, he's ready. And the day she has her radio thingy, he's driving to her to confess. But what happens is he sees her entering the car after Ju-won randomly arrives at the radio station and pretty much like takes her hostage, and she says nothing.
No, but here's the thing. He doesn't take her hostage. He literally says, "Come with me," and she says, "Okay, I'll go with you." Why?
So in the way the drama portrays it, she's like, well, there are those final strings of affection lingering, and even though he's no longer the man I'd fallen in love with, I just couldn't say no to him. Like, it's a very dumb thing. It's a very chick-lit American 2000s movie thing to do. So, and she goes with him. And it's stupid. They have a cafe. They have yet another cafe scene. At this point, they've had way too many cafe scenes. And he's basically like, listen, I realized you're the best for me. Let's just, get married, be awesome. And she's just quiet for like the most of it. And then she's like, no, we really can't. You would think the stuff has ended here. But he's like, I take this as a challenge to win you back. So he keeps on coming back, interrupts her work meeting, just randomly inserts himself into her life to the point where people around her are like, are they back together? Did we just not know? Like, her own sister and her best friend don't know what's going on because Bora is that non-communicative about it. So then you have this guy, Ju-won, going to Su-hyuk and being like, well, we're not together yet, but we will be together soon. You know how madly she's been in love with me. So far, like hair flip. And, she'll be really embarrassed when she thinks back and sees that you made her waver. Like, her. Bora's just going to hate that. So, just go away from her life. And so Hyuk's like, oh my God, that's true. You, the guy who cheated on her and broke her heart and made her miserable, are the right one for her. I am the one who's wrong. I'll just not confess. The heck is happening right now?
It makes no sense. It's like he had too much iced Americano and had brain freeze. I totally get that they are prolonging this. They just need to stretch to episode 14. And there's a whole bunch of stuff that's happening with the other two couples. So you need something to happen with these guys. You can't have the protagonists not have anything to do while drama unfolds for the other two. But this was like...
It's made up conflict. This conflict should not have existed.
It's also that it undercuts what you've done in the last 2 episodes. You've just told us that they communicate and that they are understanding each other. Now, if that has happened, then how do we get here? Like, when did the rewind happen? What was the time travel bit that I missed here?
The very final thing that happens in this confession arc, when Bora confesses to Su-hyuk, it's a very randomly inserted scene. It doesn't actually organically go with the way the editing is done. And it's also very closely cut. It's a very awkwardly filmed. And you would think that a drama that has staged scenes so beautifully until that point wouldn't do this, but they did. I have an unflattering hypothesis about this, which I will get into in a second. So, what happens is she confesses, he just doesn't respond. So, she walks away thinking, well, that's that then. I mean, if a guy can't even confess back, like if he has feelings but can't say it, I just can't do anything more here. So, Bora's like, I'm a reasonable adult. I'll just go on with my life. And she doesn't act like a devastated, person. She just like goes on with her life. Great. Yeah, honestly, great choice. Fine. So she does that. And then she finishes writing her draft. And I had an inkling the story was going here. Like back when she first started writing her essay slash book, I had an idea that this one is going to put her feelings in her book and he's going to read it, and that is where the conflict is going to be concluded. Yeah, it is exactly what happened. Despite her to his face saying, I love you, say it back to me, and him saying nothing, later on when he reads her draft and she says some really very basic shit, she doesn't say anything super deep. She's like, oh, my feelings, I realize the man I liked, whatever. He reads it and he goes, I must run to her and confess. So then he runs to her to confess. It's painful. It's painful.
Tiring. It's tiring.
Yeah.
It's also, I mean, I will say this, especially as an editor, as a text editor, a lot of the times when you see the printout in front of you, it all makes a lot more sense than when the writer was rambling in your face. So maybe that's what we were going for. But what makes absolutely no sense, I do not know a single editor who will go through that copy and be like, I'm seeing the ultimate message. No, I am fixing it first. I'm going to. I need to fix the syntax and the bad phrasing and the rephrasing.
Nobody is finding
required.
anything deep in the draft when they're editing. Like that just does not happen. And also you needed her to write a whole essay to explain her feelings to you. You already know how she feels. She told you. Like this is the
She told you.
ultimate case of a man ignoring what a woman says and thinking he knows better than her what she needs in her life. I do not. Su-hyuk, see, he's the most unevenly written character ever. Like, the drama wants him to be one thing. The drama wants him to be insightful but quiet and observant, a witness to things that happen, a guy who slowly processes feelings but is growing, a guy who sets boundaries. Like, when Bora insulted him, he set a boundary. He's like, I'm not taking this from you. Bora apologized. I love those scenes. That's great. It's a guy who communicates. He draws lines where it needs to be drawn. Great. But on the other hand, he's also supposed to be a bad boyfriend who just does not explain to his 4-year relationship.
A commitment.
Yeah, he's supposed to be a commitment form who just doesn't have like access to his own feelings and cannot, reply to the confession of the woman he loves and will just like say mean things to her. Like they have this one meeting, because she's like, I'm still finishing up my draft, and he just like an asshole says, when a writer is not convinced about her ending, the readers will not be either. What the hell are you saying? You don't know what the ending is that she's chosen.
It's like you said, he's all of these great things, but he has all of these so-called flaws which don't add up. Like you can't have those two things, they're opposing traits. And when you put those two together, it just makes for a character that's inconsistent. There's all of this, like you'll have him behave one way for 3 episodes and then he'll suddenly do something that completely undercuts what you've seen of him so far. So it's damn confusing. And just to say that because he looks lovely in these clothes, I'll forget all of this. I mean, no. You didn't even give me a shirtless shower scene. What on earth are you going on about? Anyway, no, more seriously.
Su-hyuk is a character that it was great as a concept, but he really, really fell apart in the execution.
But this is true of every male character in this show, to be fair. Like, I don't see a single character that is male in this show that lives up to any ideal, but also sticks to the concept with which they were introduced.
So you have Jin-ho's character now, okay? And Jin-ho's character is interesting in that he's introduced as like this guy who's just come out of the army and he's just got the hots for women in general. Like everybody keeps saying that, oh, you just come out of the army, just like all boys, you'll fall in love with the first woman that, looks at you. It's pretty much, and honestly, the drama does absolutely nothing to disprove this assertion. So he goes clubbing practically the day he comes out of army, and he sees Bomi, that's Bora's younger sister, who is aimless in life. She may have graduated college. It's very hard to say. They don't specify her age or why she's living with her sister and has no job. This is not an Asian family dynamic at all. At this point, she would either be studying for something or working somewhere. Otherwise, she doesn't just get a free pass. This is simply not how Asian families work.
It's not our
It's
culture.
not our culture. Okay, so Bomi meets this guy, and he's kind of goofy and lovable, and like, on the one hand, he's very respectful when he's talking to her. On the other hand, he also kind of stalks her. I full-on stalks her, pretty much.
Yeah.
And the thing is, his belief is that fate keeps bringing them together. And Bomi is like, you are creeping me out. And like initially she was responding to a few of his messages because she had like found him kind of cute and given him her number. But then she's like, oh, this is getting too much. She's like, if you message me again, I'm going to block you. And then, of course, Bora, not knowing that it's what her own sister says, that, like, you just don't text her, which I initially thought, great advice from an older woman. Stop stalking the girl, damn it. She's clearly not interested. And then, of course, she turns around and tells her friend, hi, it's such a nice boy. He shouldn't be pursuing a clubber. And then I just wanted to kill myself. Why did I have any expectations? But then this relationship progresses to a point when Bomi and Jin-ho start dating.
And it happens without explanation, like this sudden shift where she's suddenly seeing him in a better light. Jin-ho gets a job at Jin-ho's coffee shop as a server, and just there is no explanation.
There is actually. And the explanation is the worst. The explanation is that they all meet up for like this housewarming thing that's happening at Bora's new place. And it comes out that Jin-ho has also fallen into a scam, a Ponzi scheme, which he tries to explain to everybody that it's not a Ponzi scheme. It's just, very pyramid-shaped scheme. And Bomi's like, oh my God, you also fall for scams? So do I. We have so much in common. And they start dating secretly, which it turns out to not be that secret. Like they go through most of the, their dating thinking nobody knows about them. But in the end, it turns out everybody knows about them. And
Everyone
it's not
knew.
addressed. Like when did they find out? When did Bora find out that the one she was judging was her own sister? Like there's no connection. It's like each of these relationships were just directed separately, and they were trying to connect all of these things through like connecting scenes, which is why Bora's reaction to some of these relationships were very bland, and she didn't have any insight, like because these were connecting scenes of separate storylines that were not cohesively written.
So zero cohesion, and the whole point of this relationship basically seems to be to create a moment of rupture in the narrative when we learn that Bomi is pregnant. Like all teenagers in K-drama right now, the moment they have sex, they become pregnant. I mean, what I will give it credit for is at least they have one moment where there is a conversation of, should I carry on with the pregnancy? Should I not carry on with the pregnancy? But it is entirely token. She is, of course, going to hold on to this pregnancy. And they are, even though he is a server, she has no idea what she wants
Both
to
are
do in
part-timers
life.
at the
They have
cafe. That's their income source.
Both are at the same cafe. They have no direction, no aspirations, nothing.
Because Bomi has so little, she values herself so less that she looks at this guy who adores her, who like practically worships her and sees her as this perfect being. She cannot stand the version she sees in her sister's eyes, which is that you're imperfect, you're not doing anything with your life, make better choices. She hates that so much that she turns to this guy who just blindly worships her and says, well, you're imperfect, I'm imperfect, but you think I'm perfect, therefore you are perfect for me. This is terrible.
Agreed. Also, Jin-ho has really the loveliest smile. So I can absolutely see this working out.
That's the worst thing. That's the worst thing.
She said her mouth stuffed with chicky. No, he's got this
We are
beautiful.
4 hours into recording, guys. I'm hungry.
Listen, honestly, when you said, "Can you do this?" and I was like, "Yes, of course I can do this. So exciting! It'll be done in what, 45 minutes? 450 minutes later." But anyway, had the relationship just stayed at two young people who are unsure of their place in the world and trying to figure it out, just coming together and staying together, I get it. It's
I
fine.
would have loved it.
There's nothing
Yeah.
wrong with that. Let's look at two things. One is that Jin-ho has been living in Jin-ho and Yu-jung's basement, which would be fine if it didn't also mean that he sleeps inside a closet.
They don't exactly show you, him sleeping there on the regular, but that is a private space where he can retreat to if other people come. That is my take on that entire situation. He's not Harry Pottering the whole
It's
under the
very
staircase.
odd because there's like you're going to sleep, there's a floor space and you could totally sleep on that, but no, he crawls into a closet. Anyway, all relationships in Bora Deborah have to come to a conclusion that is matrimonial. And the only reason that two teenagers would think about matrimony, presumably, is if they get pregnant. The last time I remember seeing a teenage pregnancy in a K drama was Our Blues, which had these two again teenagers who fall in love. Except they are not aimless teenagers like these two. They have actually very clear.
They both have ambition. The girl, especially, clearly has a bright future ahead.
And she becomes pregnant. She chooses to have the baby. She also, there's a much more extended period when she says that no, she's not going to have the baby, but at the last moment she decides she's going to carry through with the pregnancy. And he's going to put his life on hold so that she can go ahead and do whatever she wants to do while being a teenaged mother. Now, at the time, I found it really uncomfortable that as a teenager you have to have this child, like there's a compulsion almost built into the storytelling. Like there's a moment in which Shin Mina's character meets the young pregnant teenager and asks to touch her belly, which is like the whole world of the show is saying that no, you can't give up this child. There's very little acknowledgement of really what it means to be a mother at age 16 or at a very young age before you figured out what you want to do in your life. And that is very much a problem in this relationship because Bomi, you see, is a massive insecurities and completely unclear about what she wants to do. How are they going to raise this child? Why do they want this child? Why are they like getting married because one is pregnant is about as awful an idea as staying married for children, which, by the way, Bomi and Bora are supposed to know is a bad idea because they've been through this.
Oh, to be perfectly clear, Bomi doesn't seem to be in her teenager. She seems to be in her early 20s. But it doesn't honestly matter what her age is. She is adult enough to have consensual sex, but she, like we said, is aimless, doesn't have a job, she lives at her sister's place. Her husband to be lives in the basement of the owner of the cafe he works at, doesn't pay rent. Neither of them had the financial or honestly the emotional capacity to have and raise a child together. There are these brief moments where the drama almost acknowledges the ridiculousness of their situation. You have the moment she finds out that she's pregnant, the guy is like, "Yeah, you're pregnant." Then he goes away, he sits alone in a room, and a second you see his face fall, and then he psychs himself up. He's like, yeah, I'm happy, and he walks out. It's clearly a trial for him. And the thing is, we have seen, like in other better dramas, we have seen the consequence of, sort of going ahead with having a child, getting married very early. We've seen that in 18 again.
Yeah.
The woman makes the decision to have the young girl, 18-year-old girl, makes the decision to have the child. Their families don't support them. The boy gives up his basketball career to go, help her raise the child, like their child. And he resents her and the child and everything else for it. She is deified for not having such resentments, but he's vilified for it, because how dare you resent having a baby when you're 80-year-old at the cusp of having a brilliant basketball career. And in this drama, you have these two very young adults deciding to not just have the baby but get married. And you have Bora for a second, like Bomi gives her almost just a second to process it, then Bomi immediately goes defensive. It's like she expects the entire world to like rain fire at her for being pregnant, and like Bora hasn't said a word, like nothing bad, nothing even harsh. She's still processing that her very young sister is pregnant, and she says a very sensible thing, that you don't have to do anything. You don't have to have the child, and just because you're having a child, you don't have to get married. She asks her sister, are you really going to let situations control your decision? And Bomi's response to that is, I cannot be as calculating as you are. Not everybody has everything planned out.
So this was the thing, right? That we talked about this in another lifetime at the start of this podcast recording. That the levels of calculation, the levels of spontaneity, the levels of impulsiveness that are accepted. I feel like Bomi is the closest to being a woman who gets all the sympathy of the storytelling. Like when she is unsure about herself, when she is dissociating from the problems that she has by going to a club, for example, early on when we see her, at every point the story is sympathetic towards her. There's no judgment towards her at any point, which really worries me, because then this becomes the kind of idealized femininity, whereas Bora, even though she is the protagonist, is the messed up version. That just does not sit well with me, because actually Bora's responses, like you pointed out, are so much better. Bora might be all over the place with her reactions to the men in her life, oddly enough, but with her sister, she is consistently a wonderful parent figure. She's understanding, she's not judgmental. And it seems like she has been performing this role for a very long time. And that's why she's sort of, grown into it, which is why she acts out her childish side in her romantic relationships. She doesn't bring that into her home. In her home, as Bomi's older sister, she has a lot of responsibility to shoulder, and she does that very gracefully. But the storytelling doesn't give her the sympathy for that. The storytelling puts all the sympathy on Bomi, which is a mystifying decision. And honestly, I really just want someone to make it okay for a teenaged girl to say, I don't want to have a child now. I will do this later.
But I realized that despite having women head writers and increasingly women directors, because for the longest time you rarely ever
Yeah,
saw women
yeah.
directors in K-dramas, and a largely female audience, the fact of the matter is that it's women who have internalized patriarchy, writing for an audience who have internalized patriarchy.
But every time I see mainstream culture doing this, I mean, Extraordinary Attorney Wu, the way it demonized
Tesumi.
that, yeah, the way they demonized a young woman for saying that I'll have the baby, but I cannot raise this child. I'm not ready to do this.
And then trusting the baby to the father who clearly wanted the baby.
But she gets so demonized for that decision. I mean, I really wish writers would sit down to think about why they're making these choices. The characterization of Bomi is that this is one responsible thing that she does, which establishes her as a mature person. It's not about age or anything, but the fact that she chooses to be a mother is what gives her a contrast to Bora, who is continuing to live like a child, very literally. One of the last things we see them do is Su-hyuk and Bora doing baby talk as they walk her down. Like they've literally infantilized themselves, while the younger couple is the mature ish one. I will give it this much: there isn't judgment attached to that childishness, but neither is there respect. And that is ultimately, after all of this, like I said, I stuck through Bora Deborah, because I've enjoyed how a lot of K dramas have actually, for all the ups and downs that happen in the course of whatever 14, 16, 21 hour long storytelling, ultimately they're backing their female protagonists. They're really sort of there for them. They give them the redemption arcs, they stand by them to the end. The ultimate disappointment for me with Bora Deborah is that despite a lot of things, individuals that we have spent a fair amount of time talking about, all those good things are ultimately constantly undercut by a story that does not actually love its heroine.
Yeah, I agree. Bora was so great, like in many moments of the drama, but in moments of the drama, she wasn't great throughout, and that was a writer's choice. That was also the director's choice. This drama had two directors. One very experienced director, who's by the way directed. So this is director Taegon, has directed Age of Youth, iconic, both
Yeah,
seasons.
yeah.
He's directed a lot of dramas throughout his career. You cannot, blame this guy. You cannot accuse him of not knowing his craft. And the co-director is an actress. This is her first directorial venture, but since she is credited as one of the main directors, she is not an assistant director. She's credited as a director. So this is director Min Jung. And this is her first directorial debut, and I don't know who directed how much. I can't blame it on one director versus the other. I am tempted to be bitchy and say that certain moments where certain characters acted very out of character, but they were relatively minor scenes, may have been done by the newer director. But again, that's a guess. It's speculation because I can't fathom an experienced director doing these things, but I could be wrong. Maybe after all of this time, this is the drama he's decided to just like shoot himself in the foot with.
Also, let's not forget that ultimately any film based work ultimately comes together on an editing table. So you have a whole bunch of decisions that you take as directors and editors sitting together at that editing table about what is going to happen and what is going to be the rhythm and what is going to be the perspective. There is a deliberate choice here.
So, final words. I hope writer Ah Kyung, who clearly has some talent, actually a lot of talent, in creating scenarios, especially relationships, which are evocative and memorable. Like we spent, what, 5 hours at this point talking about this drama. We complained for a quite a large amount of time. However, if you have reached this point, you know that we have also loved quite a bit of the writing. We wouldn't have spent our entire evening well into the night recording this podcast if this drama didn't work in certain ways and made promises to us. Promises it broke, but the promises were shining and bright, and we really appreciated it. And I do not understand what happened, but maybe writer Ah Kyung, this is only her second project. She did Mad for You before. Another drama with immense promise in the beginning, started stuttering in the second half, and then completely nosedived in the final episodes. That does seem to be a pattern, even though it's just been two dramas. I want her to be paired with a different set of directors. Director Lee Tae-gyeon is great, a giant in his field, but maybe not the right director to pair with this writer. Clearly, she has potential. And maybe she needs a director who can like nudge her to stay on a consistent path. Because something about the writing, even if I completely ignore all of the directorial choices that were made that don't always come from writing, the consistency of the character, the way a story is pushed along is mainly the writer's forte.
Yes.
And writers have quite a bit of power, especially when they come from a successful first project, which Mad for You was. This is a successful second project. Bora de Bora was ranking very high. It was topping the charts domestically, and of course did amazingly internationally. So it's one of the most popular Korean dramas on Prime. So again, a second success. Really, really, I hope she gets paired with a different director who can hopefully steer her away from Trump jokes and Auschwitz references and just stick to the relationship drama and better dialogues. That's that's my hope.
My hope is just really to see the women that she dreams of rather than the women I think she feels she's expected to deliver.
Oh, that's a good one. Good one. This drama consumed me so much for the weeks that it was running. I ended up writing 3 different essays for it, and I'm in the process of editing a video on this. Very occasionally do dramas grip me to this extent. And most of the time, because the fandom in general was giving such love to this drama, I felt obligated to only voice the dissent, because not enough people were doing it, and the few people who were doing it were getting downvoted to hell. That's one of the memories I'll have of this drama going forward, the fandom reacting the way it did to certain critiques. The good thing, of course, is the fandom did come together when it came to the Auschwitz reference, which was dumbass. I am going to link to this post that I wrote, and also a much better, well-researched post that I found explaining why that reference was so dumb-headed, out of place, and just should not have been made. And yeah, one of the positive fan effects that happened around interventions, yes. Okay, Deborah, final words?
Final words. Thank you for letting me go on for as long as I have. And this was, like I said, did not think there was going to be so much, but there was. And I am just once again really thankful that you asked me on.
I'm really thankful you came on. And if anybody who's watched this drama is like, I want more Yoo In-na in my life, well, lots of options out there. Start with Queen In-hun's Man, my all-time favorite. Rewatch Goblin, because I'm sure you've watched Goblin before. And who did not love Sunny Shi? Watch Touch Your Heart. Such a sweet romantic drama. And okay, after that, just look up my drama list and watch all of Yoo In-na's dramas. Okay, guys, Dramas Over Flowers can be found on Twitter at Dramas Overflow, on Instagram at Dramas Over Flowers _. You can find me at The Drama Notes. Dipanjana, where can people find you?
Don't find me, I feel. But I'm on Twitter as well as Instagram as Dipanjana, Dpanjana. But don't find me. It's fine. You're missing nothing.
You will find the link to our newsletter below. We're starting to get a little more regular, so sign up.
You can find us on Facebook, just search for Dramas Over Flowers, or you can come and visit us on our blog, that's dramasoverflowers.net. Dramas Over Flowers is part of the Frolic Podcast Network. Find more podcasts you'll love at frolic.media/podcasts. Oh, and before I forget, guys, you started leaving us replies on Spotify and we are reading them. It's been a lot of fun. We're going to talk more about it on the next episode. Until then, thank you and goodbye.
Bye.
that I